hear it there.
Yeah, I think it's gone down some. I mean, we gotta roll with it, brother. We'll roll with it. So I can send you the new link on where we're at. I'll send you a new link on where we are.
On YouTube?
Yeah. This is a weird one today. One, two, one, two, one, two.
I don't
Thanks
hear
for the
anything.
pick.
You sound perfect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's all gravy, brother. Class, just bear with us. We're gonna get it right back in here. If you got some feedback, then we're gonna roll with it. I think as long as we talk, it'll be all right, Scott. I think we're good enough. What's that, Scott?
Did you send me that link?
Yeah, I'm coming right now. Coming right to you. Scott Jelinek, this is an honor. I ran into some of your seminar attendees came to one of my functions over the weekend.
Nice.
Some young ladies, they went to your thing. Very, very kind. All right, that link has been sent, my brother. I sent that link to you. Class, welcome to the Real Estate Roundup Flip Tips. Welcome. We have some technical difficulties going down, but we're going to get it straight. I'm honored, pleasure, pleased to bring to you someone that has helped raise my financial literacy tremendously over the last, I don't know. How long I've been knowing you, Scott?
It's been a while now. I don't know, 12 years? I don't know.
Yeah, it's been forever, right? So Scott Jelinek, I'm thankful that you're here. Real estate investor, been doing this since the, what, 1990s?
1994, I bought my first house.
14. Good God, man. I was just thinking about you the other day, how some men can buy more houses than several generations of people, you know? It's quite interesting. Scott, tell us a little bit of background about you, brother, before we get rocking and rolling in class. If you're new to the channel, subscribe to my channel. Please smash the thumbs up. Let's get rocking and huh?
I like the subscribe brick. That's nice. Very nice.
It works, brother. It works. Scott, who are you? Tell us about you, my brother.
All right. So for those, okay, new link. Let me do this real quick. So for those of you who don't know, I've been real estate investing now for about 25 years. I bought my first house on accident. Well, I didn't buy the first house on accident. I got into investing on accident. For those of you who are old enough to remember, they used to do a thing called non-qualifying assumptions, which is very similar to what we do now in Subject 2, only it was allowed by the banks back then. And so I bought my first house, and I'm going to give you a short version because I don't want to keep you guys all night. But I bought my first house. It was $5,000 down, $675 a month. And a few weeks after I bought it, one came for sale on the block, same house. This was a townhouse in Virginia Beach that said $2,000 down, take over payments. So without knowing anything about equity, values, and nothing, I felt like I got ripped off. I paid $5,000 down. This one was $2,000 down. So my genius idea was to purchase that one as well, to kind of level me off at $3,500 each. And that's kind of what sparked it, with me becoming obsessed with calling on every for sale sign and buying anything I could that was non-qualifying. Some as low as 500 down, some as high as 5,000 down.
Wow.
I bought as many as I could, having the tenants basically pay them off. And it was all for a long-term plan that it sucks now, but 30 years from now, this will all be worth it. That's a long, slow plan. I've modified since, but that was my initial plan. What got me into it.
I love listening to you talk, man, because when I went to your presentation, and you have said this before, everybody's needs, financial needs are different, Scott. Everybody has a different lifestyle, and not everybody needs to own, 40, 50 houses to have a great life, Scott.
And most people, it's a lot less than they think, which is why we do those exercises, because most people feel like they need 50 grand a month and 80 grand a month. And when you actually calculate the money they would actually spend to live their perfect life, on average, most of them are closer to 10 grand a month. If they didn't have any debt and didn't have to go to work and they can make 10 grand a month, they can do anything and everything that they actually wanted to do.
Wow.
Which is a lot easier to attain than most people think.
Welcome, class. If you're just getting here, I am Chris Haskins. I'm hanging out with one of my mentors, Scott Jelinek. We're going to be talking about his slow flip process in a few minutes. Scott, I've just given some people to log on. We're right about 30 people now.
Sorry.
Yeah, Scott. We were just talking about that. You want to disclose? You talk about how many properties you own at this time, and how you got there.
So right now I have 108. I finally broke the 100 mark, and I never got the joy of breaking the 100 because I was at 84 and I bought a package of 24. And so I feel like I got slighted. I never got the big celebration hitting 100 houses. So yeah, I've been buying one at a time for a long time, and I went. Well, this is a long story, but I went straight up during the boom, and then we had the bust, and went back down to about 30 properties, and then have been rebuilding since then.
So where did you get that mindset, Scott, of what I am, I guess every real estate investor kind of crosses a bridge as to not worrying about fast money and look at the long-term picture of our real estate careers?
Well, it was several different things, but one is, I don't know if I told you this already. Well, when I was telling you a little bit about myself, I dropped out of high school in 11th grade. I don't have special education, special skills. I've never been back to school. And so it was always kind of, I don't have a choice. There was no backup plan. I have to make this work. So even when things were great and when things were bad, it wasn't a matter of, a lot of people, as you know, during the bust, they got out of this industry and they went back to their jobs and went back to trying other businesses. It was never an option for me because I'm like, there's nothing else for me to do unless I'm going to get a job as a brain surgeon to maintain my lifestyle, which was tough to do without, going to school first. It was, I had to figure out a way to make it work. So wholesaling, I love wholesaling. I know you wholesale as well. Flipping, rehabbing is fantastic. All of those things are great, but if you stop doing them for even a month, you stop getting paid. With these slow flips, we get paid. We do the work once, we get paid over and over again every month, which is why I love them so much.
We're gonna get to that. Yeah, I want to make sure people. That's the part that you didn't start off thinking slow flips, no doubt.
Right. Absolutely. That evolved over time, and I'll wait till you're ready to get started, but I'll tell you about that evolution.
Yeah, what I want to do, Scott, my quest, my mission is to raise my viewers and raise the financial literacy of my fellow mankind through real estate investing and entrepreneurship, Scott. And what I'm thinking when I talk to you, I heard you say there was no alternative for you. Talk a little bit about that.
So, well, this is just going to go to the boom and bust. So during the bust, during 2007 to 2008, I showed up to work every single day for almost a year, and I had no business. I had no work. I would show up, and things were horrible. You know what was going on. Nobody was paying. I mean, it was absolutely horrible. So a lot of people that were in my same industry, we would meet, and they were like, "Oh, I'm going back to my job, or I'm going to do this, or I'm starting something new." And I remember thinking and having meetings with friends of mine, and I'm like, "Well, what can I do? What else can I do? If I can't do real estate, what can I do?" And I came up with a big goose egg every time. I said, no, I have to make this work. This is, I don't know what else I could do to make the kind of living I want to make and to live the kind of lifestyle I want to live. Real estate was it.
Wow, man. I heard you, what Jim Rohn preaches to Scott. Where the hell did you, what, this is one of my big philosophies. What can I do? What can I do to make more? Where'd you get that from?
I don't know, from life. Speaking of Jim Rohn, I'm a big fan of Anthony Robbins. And so it's funny because I started listening to Anthony Robbins when I was about 13 years old. And I was always in it. And I used to play it at night when I'd go to sleep. And I knew all of it was a cassette tape set, this is a long time ago. But I remember I found that cassette tape set one time and I put them in and played them. And I still knew them like word for word, but more importantly, things that I completely forgot everything, right? But things that I say and things that I do, that's just the way I am. When I played that tape set again, I'm like, that's where I got that from. I didn't even realize it. I was like, that's where I got that saying from. That's where I got that mindset. And it was amazing the way that worked. Years had gone by and I completely forgot about it.
Wow. Where did you get that? Where did you get it from?
You get programmed and you don't even realize it.
How did you get Tony Robbins at 13?
I was always into entrepreneurship, and I remember I ordered it out of the back of Entrepreneur magazine. Back then, I think it was called Nightingale, something that did the cassette
Nightingale
tape.
Conan, yeah.
And you'd be able to just fill out a card and check the box, bill me later, and mail it in, and they would send it to you. And they sent it to me.
That is so cool, man. Holy cow. So Scott, you are, not an overnight success, but you're like almost, good God, 13 to now. Your brain has been magnetized so much that it's just, this is who you are.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you talk to people. It's funny that you say that. When you talk to people who are not in this world, stuff you say seems bizarre, and they either admire it or they think you're an ass because they're like, well, people just can't take off for a month. People can't just, and they don't realize. Well, yes, people can. You can't, but people can. Or a lot of times when people say, you can't do that, what they really mean is they can't do that, and so
Wow.
they push that off to you. They're like, no, you can't just go and do that, and I'm like, well, I do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Almost like you can't do subject to. You know what? I had an attorney tell one of my clients last week, we can't wholesale in Virginia, Scott. So I'm going to have to.
Yeah. Oh, what about seller-side only HUDs? Do you use seller-side only HUDs?
Now that I learned it from you, you want to break that down for our viewers?
Well, before I talk about it, I want to tell you that to this day, there's attorneys that when we have a closing say you can't do that. That's illegal. And I'm like, well, all of the other attorneys do it, and we've been doing it for years. There's actually a button on their computer that generates the HUDs that says seller side. All they have to do is click it, and it generates it for them. They don't have to. So it's in the program, and I have to tell them that. I'm like, listen, it's in your program. There's a button. And but before we tell them, they're like, you can't do that. You can't do that. And I'm like, yes, you can. You're the lawyer. I get it, but yes, you can. Hit this button and fine, you can do it.
Give us, Scott, just for the price of admission today, seller side only HUD. Break it down.
So seller side only HUD absolutely changed my life. And I'm going to tell you, if you wholesale, and if you don't wholesale, you can cover your ears for a minute. It's not going to affect you. But if you wholesale, one of the big challenges we face as wholesalers is if we're making a good fee, $20, $30, $50,000, we're afraid. If my seller sees how much I'm making, they're going to freak out and not want to sell it to me. Valid concern, and very likely they will. So what did we do to combat this? We did double closings. Well, I'll close on it here. I'll buy it for 50, and then I'll turn around and sell it over here for 100, and I make my 50 grand. And it costs you on average about $2,000 between closing costs, title insurance, recording taxes, everything else that comes with it. Well, that was until somebody taught me about a seller side only HUD, and it blew my mind. And I'm going to tell you, in 2006 alone, 1 year, I spent over $100,000 in closing costs, double closing, just to save people's feelings because you didn't want someone to see what you were making and get mad. Well, I learned about the seller side only HUD, and what that means is the seller only sees the parts of the transaction that pertain to them. The buyer sees everything because it all pertains to them. So you're not keeping it from the buyer, but the seller only sees you agreed to buy it for 50. This is how much their closing costs were, and this is how much they're going to walk away with. They don't see any other fees or assignment fees that are built onto it. So now you no longer have to double close. The seller never sees your fee. The buyer sees it. Obviously, your buyer is going to see it because they're paying that amount. So it does pertain to them.
We don't care if the buyer sees it, right? We don't care if the buyer sees it.
No, the buyer already knows their purchase price. They're buying it for the 100 grand. They know what they're paying.
So, seller side only HUD for people that don't want to see that. Damn, I had a question. Oh, no more double closings for you.
Correct. The only time I would double close anymore is if you were buying a HUD property or a REO, a foreclosure. If you're buying an MLS listed property, most of the times they won't allow assignments. So then you would have to double close. Barring that, I never double close anymore.
Okay, seller side only HUD. And isn't the new, what is the new statements that we're using when the end buyer is getting a loan?
Still use the old ones because in cash transaction deals they don't use the new ones. Those are for mortgages or regular regular transactions. We still are on the old ones.
Well, I know we are, but I'm saying when we're doing a retail, aren't the new documents seller and buyer side anyway?
New documents, they never see it anyway. But there's no assignments on those anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I'm just talking about the mentality of the closing agent to know that it's out there.
Right. They have no business to see what you're doing with it after the fact anyway, but that's just the way people are.
Nice. Okay. All right, class. So the reason I wanted to interview Scott Jelinek, he has this system called Soul Flips. If you have any questions, class, make sure you put them in the chat box. Smash the thumbs up button on the description here. And if you want us to get to your question really quickly, please do the super chat. We will do the super chat questions first and then get to the rest of the questions. Some Q&A. Q&A is my favorite. Scott, slow flips.
So first off, I hope you got some time. I hope nobody's got to be anywhere. So first off, what I call the great rental myth. And what I mean by that, what I mean by the great rental myth is basically what everybody is taught everywhere to this day, what they preach, put 10% down and get a mortgage and make a spread of a couple $100, and you keep fighting that good fight for 30 years and someday it'll be paid off. But they even go so far as to say never pay it off, take out that equity and use the equity to put down on more houses. And the great rental myth goes like this. They say if you have $100,000 in cash, just to use easy numbers, if you have $100,000 in cash, you could buy one house and put $100,000, you know, pay it forward cash, or you can buy 10 houses with $10,000 down on each, right? And if the market went up just 10%, on the leverage model, you made 100% return. And on the cash model, you only made a 10% return. And that's sexy as hell. And they sold me on that. I was the biggest fan of this model for years. I loved it, and I parlayed everything. I take out money and buy more, take out money and buy more. Well, it's true, and all of that's fantastic until it's not. And, you know, again, this is me being old and having gone through the boom and bust, but that same exact philosophy works the opposite. If the houses went down 10%, on the leverage model, you have 0 left. And on the cash model, you still have 90 grand left. But on top of that, think about 2008. What if the houses went down 40%? Well, on the cash model, you still have $60,000. On the leverage model, not only do you have 0, you owe 200 grand more than your value of what you own.
Wow.
And so this is what happened to me. So I had gotten to 30, 40 properties right when the boom was starting. And then I started really learning about all this, you know, cash flow and leverage, right? And mortgages were easy to get. So I would refi a property and I would take out 80 grand and I'd buy 2 more. Down payments, I was buying sub 2, so I'd put 20 grand down, I'd buy more. Well, I got to 84 properties and I was in nice houses. Well, overnight, if you remember, for those of you old enough who have been doing this for a while, overnight, about 30% of my tenants stopped paying. Just stopped overnight. Everybody was losing their jobs. If you remember the mayhem that was going on. Not only that, the property value, you couldn't sell anything anymore. I owed 150 on a house. Now it's only worth 90, and I owe 150. It appraised at 200. I got a mortgage for an 80% mortgage. I got 150 out. Now it's worth 90. So you're stuck. So I got left with nothing but regret on if I had just kept my first 20 houses, my Virginia Beach townhouses. I was buying non-qualifying assumptions, never refied, never parlayed it into more. It would have, I'd have been about 20 grand a month positive and not tried, into this whole thing. Well, the bust hit me hard. So I lost about 55 of those houses to foreclosure.
Wow.
It was a major, and I'm the guy who stopped foreclosures for years. So this was majorly devastating to me. And, I had to actually go through the list, pick out which ones I was going to be able to save and which ones I weren't. Well, after the bust and after the dust settled, I made a point of speaking with the older guys. I feel like I've been investing at that time 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 years, but there's guys that have been doing it 40 years, 50 years, and I'm still friends with several of them. Well, I started talking with everybody to find out what did they do different? What did they do right? What did they do wrong? What could I have done differently? And one of the common denominators, and it was shocking to me because everything I read, everything they teach is anti this. One of the common denominators with all these older guys, they have 40, 50, 80, 100 houses, is they all own them free and clear.
Wow.
And free and clear is like, that's the worst thing in the world. Everything, every seminar in the world, they're like, no, free and clear, you're a fool. Your equity is not making you a return. All these reasons, free and clear is the worst thing a person can do. And all these things they want to teach you about free and clear are how it's so horrible for you. And I embraced it. And yet I don't have the money to go buy these houses free and clear. So what do? And that's where I came up with the slow flip program. So it's 2 parts of it. There's the buying them and then the way we sell them. So I am a huge fan now of free and clear. So how do you buy a house free and clear? So first off, we're going to start off, unless you have millions of dollars, you can't buy free and clear. So I'm going to tell you first off what a slow flip is. A slow flip is really just the simple way I explain it to people is we buy houses like a car and we sell them like a house. That's the short version. It's the process of flipping a property as slowly as possible for the fastest possible path for wealth. Best way I can describe it. So we buy properties on average in my area, and I know you guys may be all over, but in my area, the properties that I've been buying on average to max out at about $30,000.
So the purchase price is 30K, Scott.
So I know some people are like 30,000. You're out of your mind. You can't buy houses that cheap. I have. I'm going to tell you a story you'll laugh at. So I have one bad review on my book on Amazon, one bad one, and the guy what he complained about, he says. He's delusional if he thinks people are going to believe you can buy houses for $30,000. And I'm like, well, he's right. In his market, I don't know who he is or where he's from, but I'm guessing New York or somewhere where, you can't buy a house under $300,000. In my area and in a lot of areas, you can buy houses, these lower end houses. I try and buy the best of the worst. So I buy them for an average of $30,000.
Okay.
I borrow the whole purchase price, $30,000. So if I always borrow 30, even if I'm buying them for 15 grand, if I buy it for 25, or if I borrow it for 40, I always borrow 30 because that's always been my program. And this is the part that freaks people out a little. I pay 12% interest.
You pay what?
I pay 12% interest to my private lenders, but these mortgages are amortized for 60 months. They're 5-year mortgages, amortized, so they're paid off after 5 short years.
Okay, with purchase price, just for my class, Scott, make sure everybody got it.
30,000 at 12% for 60 months. It comes out to $667.33 per month.
Okay, so the monthly payment is.
My monthly payment is $667.33, and on average, I get $875. So I don't make any money. There's no spread there because I get taxes and insurance as well.
Okay, so your rent coming in is what average?
Average of $875.
$875 a month.
But this is the trick to it. So those numbers are all hard if I was going to do rentals. Even though it's only 5 years, it still would be devastating to a person. But what I do different is I don't actually rent anything. So
we got no cash flow. This is what I'm looking at here. You got no cash flow, right, Scott?
Correct. So I have 108 of them now, but they are all 100% of them. They're sold with owner financing. So they're not actually technically rentals.
All right.
So the day I get them, I sell them. On average, $89,000. Some, if they're in poor condition, might be 69, might be 99 or 109, but the average is $89,000. And I sell them on full term 30-year mortgages.
So the sales price is going to be what, Scott? I'm going to follow you.
The average is $89,000.
$89,000. And you sell them. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I sell them on full term for 30 years.
Full terms. For 30 years.
So they never have to refi. It's their house. We do it through a land contract for deed, a land contract.
For 30 years. Wow.
But the kicker is because we're selling it, there's no maintenance. There's no rehab. I buy them and I sell them exactly the same way. So I buy a house and it may be 20. If anyone's touched anything, well, the way I sell it, it's going to be the exact same way. I do nothing at all to it. So these numbers are not very sexy to a lot of people. They're like, well, that's not a whole lot of money. On average, are you ready for this number? That sounds really low, but on average, we make $500 per month per property once they're paid off. So for 5 years, we make nothing, and then it's $500 a month. And the reason I use 500 instead of the 875 is I still take out for taxes and insurance. And you may have some vacancy, even though I operated at a zero vacancy. And the reason I do that is because, I didn't tell you this part. When they move in, they also put $3,000 to $5,000 down, which is why I say zero vacancy, because if it's vacant for a couple months and then they put the $3,000 down, it replenishes those months that I would have had.
The down payment is how much, Scott?
Generally $3,000 to $5,000, depending on condition.
Nice.
So with $500 a month, I also do it because it's easy math. Think, what did you need for your ideal life, your future vision, your perfect life? How much did you need monthly? 10 grand, 20 grand, whatever it is, right? So say it was 20 grand and you were like, I want to do all these crazy things. Well, that means you need 40 of these. 40 may sound like a lot, but you're not paying anything for them. We get private lenders to fund them. You go out on the street and find them. We fill them. I have a whole automated process for filling them. 5 years from now, you're at that number. The conventional plan has you enslaved for 30 years. 30 years, life sentence. They have you enslaved for 30 years. So I have this vision in my head. And this vision of this enslavement part, this vision I have in my head is always of Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. You watch The Simpsons? Have you ever seen it? Mm-hmm. You know who Mr. Burns is, right? Well, I always envision him being at the top of these bank buildings you see in downtown areas, right? And I envision him being at the top like this, laughing at us and being like, go out and get my money, you know, and we do it. We have to work. We have to deal with the tenant eviction. We have to deal with the air conditioner that got stolen. We have to deal with the leaking pipes. And then we get this money from them and we mail it up to him. And it's painful, but in this scenario, we're the one collecting that money. They're out there going to work. They're out there taking care of their house. They're out there doing everything and mailing us the check. And it's a way better position to be in. So this is a number that may, people that don't know an amortization schedule, and I'm sorry if I'm rambling too much and you want to ask questions, go ahead.
Go.
People that don't know an amortization schedule should. An amortization schedule is evil genius. Now, when you're paying it on your mortgage, and I can't see a crowd here, so I don't know, how many people have mortgage.
52.
But when you're paying on your mortgage, and let's say you have a $200,000 house and you mail in a payment of $1,500, you may have like $150 to the principal. The rest of it was interest. The next month it might be $155.
Okay.
On that $30,000 house we sold for $89,000, they paid us $875 a month. Over a course of 30 years, that is $315,000 they're paying you back.
Let me write that down so I get it. 875 times 30 years.
875 times 360. Yep.
Is how much?
$315,000.
Oh, and Jesus.
Well, on top of that, so an amortization is crazy. So on your very first month, on 875 payment, I have it down here so I could show you. You paid $32 in principal. The first month you mailed in 875, 32 went to the $89,000. The balance of it was all interest. Fast forward 10 years later, you still owe $81,769.
Oh my gosh.
But the average American only stays in their home for 5 to 7 years, which means they're either going to give it back to you, they're going to refi it, or they're going to sell it. Either way, you win. If they refi it or sell it, fantastic. Now you take that 81 grand and you buy 3 more. Exact same process. Does that make sense? So I have 108 of these now, and every day I'm thinking, I look at my board, think of what I'm working on, what I have vacant. I have them all scheduled and when they get paid off. And I absolutely love it. It is by far my absolute favorite part of this entire business. Of everything I do, the slow flips are my favorite part. And I talk to people all the time that absolutely hate it. And I say that because like they hate it for a lot of reasons, because we've been ingrained to think you can't pay anything off. If you pay it off, it's dead equity, it's dead money. And I forget all that, in my opinion anyway. And then secondly, some people love their houses. And they're like, no, but what if they buy them? I love my house. I don't want to get rid of them, and they love their house. So the thought that someone else could buy them scares them. They don't want someone to buy the house. And I say, hey, if someone give me $90,000 for my $30,000 house, I'm okay with that. That's just me. I don't have any emotional attachment. I got houses I haven't even seen in ever. I have houses I've never even been inside of. So I'm okay with that.
I love it, Scott. I love it. Wow.
So that's the short version.
Good. Scott, you talking about building wealth. I heard you say people don't like it. Is building where I was reading the book, The Millionaire Next Door, talks about how boring it is. What is your opinion on building wealth being boring?
Yes, exactly that. Like I said, I was on the opposite track prior to the bust. Everything I preach against now, I was the biggest cheerleader for then. I was the one saying, man, you're a fool. Why would you leave that money in equity? You can take it out and make so much more. And I believed in it until basically, if you live that way, everything's a house of cards. You're gambling on everything staying the way it's supposed to be. And so I've taken the opposite route now where I'm like, listen, I'm slow and steady, and free and clear means, during the bust, I was calling them parting gifts. Stuff that I had paid off then, I said, no matter what happens, I know these houses are coming with me because they're paid off. And it really resonated with me now how I'm like, I have a lot paid off now, and all of them will be paid off at some point over the next 5 years. And so now I'm like, to me, that's just so much freedom. And people are like, oh, yeah, but you can pull out the money. Yeah, you guys go do that with your stuff. I'm happy with what I'm doing. It's not as crazy, fast track, sexy as, the people who want to pull out all kinds of crazy loans and move it all over the place. But I'm not into that anymore. I'm a very much simpler version of my old self. And I love it a lot more.
Scott, I want to thank you. Go ahead.
There's no more stress.
Yeah, I hear you. You know what? I'm so glad you broke it down to me a few years back, man, because I'm on that same path, and it is so boring.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to embrace boring as opposed to being out flipping contractors. No one wants to see the boring stuff, though, Scott.
Yeah. Everybody wants to do what's basic, because that's what they teach. Every seminar you go to, every training, I watch them. This is what got me, I do seminars now. You came to one, and I'll tell you what got me into doing it was after the bust, I was so pissed off that they were still teaching the same stuff that they taught before the bust. And I'm like, the world has changed, and yet they're still teaching the exact same thing. And I was like mad. I'm like, I understood before because we didn't know that something like that could happen. It never happened before, and nobody thought it was going to happen. But the fact that it did happen, and now they were still teaching the exact same model, I was like, you're screwing these people up. You're teaching them basically to put your whole future out 30 years. There's a good chance we're not going to be here in 30 years. We're waiting till then till we can enjoy our lives.
Wow.
And it was crazy. And they still teach it. I've been to all these seminars that come in and out of town. They teach the exact same thing. 30 years.
Wow. Unbelievable, man. That's why I wanted to bring you on, because your motto or your philosophy, I'm looking at mine. And I hear you talk about looking at your schedules and seeing when stuff's going to get paid off. I never did that years ago.
Right. Because you know what? It was a life sentence then. I'm not going to get paid off. 30 years, I'm not going to wait out 30 years. Talk to me in 25 years, I'll start looking at it. But now we're like 5 years, I put it right on my wall. I know exactly the month they'll be paid off. And that's, I know every single property when they're getting paid off, and I love it.
Is that a muscle, Scott, that you have to train yourself to do?
It may be, or to be honest with you, it may be old age. So it's possible that I'm just getting older now and look at things differently, or don't want to have the high pressure risk anymore. Because if somebody had told me this during the boom, actually, I should take that back. People did tell me this during the boom, older guys.
Me too.
I would nod my head, and then I would leave, and I'd be like, man, this guy's so stupid. If he just knew to take that money out, and he's got 20 houses, he could have 80 in no time, And I left the meeting feeling like that guy's stupid. I'm the smart one. And now I'm the exact opposite. And I probably leave meetings, and maybe people watching your thing now would be like, this guy's an idiot. He can make so much more of this. And I don't care. It doesn't bother me anymore because I'm like, I have everything. So I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. I don't need more. And that's the thing, is we used to just want more for the sake of more. And that's why it's important to have what you actually want. Have a future vision of what you actually want. More is not an answer.
Oh, wow, Scott. I love it. You can talk about this all day, huh?
That's the one thing that gets me excited. I love real estate. You know that. I mean, I love real estate.
Have you read the book Life and Air, Scott?
I have. So I'm actually a huge fan.
You have to have. When I read it, the thing that hit me hard in my chest was, when you sign for the loan, don't think about approved.
Enslaved.
Think about enslaved.
Enslaved. Absolutely. Yes, I'm a big fan of that book. I like it a lot. Yep.
What is your opinion on that? Go with that. What do you think about that?
So what you were just saying is a great way to think about whenever you get any loan. Now we're talking real estate, so I'm not going to get into a whole life philosophy, but I'm out of all debt. And I believe you are too. Like, I don't have credit cards, I don't have car payments, I don't have anything anymore.
Almost.
To be the exact opposite. I'm like, why would I use my cash? So they can give it to me, and then I'll just, because what do they teach you? Use your cash to make more money, and then use the money you make to pay off and that all is brilliant if everything works flawlessly. And if it doesn't, you still got this debt now that you borrowed, and you lost the cash, and now you're enslaved. They got you in that trap. And so I've completely changed everything on that, on that same program. I'm all about being free and clear, not just in my rentals, but in everything.
Wow. Yeah, and I look at when I was younger, I'm like, I need to have 100,000 a month or 80,000 a month. Then when you boil it all down, like you say, what do you really need?
Right.
And then you
find it out. I'm like, people are like, oh, I need 40,000 a month, and I won't take it as a random number. I'll say, well, explain to me what you're going to spend that 40,000 on. And when they actually start putting pen to paper, it's usually about $10,000 to $15,000.
Wow.
And yet they were willing, or I should say I was already at like $20,000 a month, and I gambled it all to get to. I wanted 100,000 a month is the number I thought I needed.
Mm-hmm.
I gambled it all when I could have just done nothing, and wow. Subsequently screwed it all up. Luckily, I was still young enough to be able to rebuild everything. But I think about how many times, but not to mention gambling and risking your actual money or your assets. What about your time? So suppose, how old are you now, Chris?
I'm 43, Scott.
Okay, so suppose you can be completely free and completely done at 43, or you have this pie in the sky number that means nothing, but it's going to take you to 60 to get there. I'm like, if you actually do the math, you're like, I'm taking 43. What am I doing? I'm going to keep grinding just to have a bigger number, and I'm going to be too old to enjoy anything?
When do we come to the realization, Scott, that we don't need, when you think about it, like, man.
Well, that's why I say it might be old age. It might be my old age kicking in. I don't know.
But I'm glad, my point for my viewers, people don't get a chance to hang out with individuals like you, Scott. We could go right to the internet and they can hear it coming from people like you.
Right.
So we're taught go out there, get in debt, leverage it all to the max, and try to use this to pay for future stuff.
So much easier. And you know what? It's so much easier for people to do it. And I'm not putting down any of these big box seminars that come into town, but they literally teach you to go out and do just that, get a mortgage and, you know, do the 30-year plan. And then next month or next year or whenever they come back to town, they will have you on stage as a success story. You know, blah, 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 has bought 5 rentals since last year. But meanwhile, he owes 100% of what they're all worth, and he's cash flowing nothing. And he has to come out of, but yet they're looking at that as a success story because that's what they teach. That's what they preach. And I'm exactly the opposite. I'm like, man, 5 years is the most I'm willing to finance anything for a house. If I can't make that house pay off in 5 years, I won't buy it.
Class, make sure you throw your questions over there. Please put your questions on the chat box. I promise we're going to get to you. A few more questions I'm going to ask Scott. And please smash the thumbs up button for our optimization purposes so people can see this online instead of watching CNN. Scott, when was the last time you watched the news?
I don't watch the news at all, but I'll tell you what. Well, I'm not going to get into that debate. I guess.
Go, man. Hit it, Scott. Let it rip.
I'll tell you what. I got angry this weekend, and I don't watch the news, but I saw it on Facebook with this crap that was allegedly in D.C. with these kids.
I don't know anything.
Yeah, I saw it on Facebook, but I actually saw the whole video, and it was such a lie. But I guess the part that really irritated me is the news literally just made something up. And when I saw the full, because I believed it, and I was mad at these kids. And then when I saw the full video, I was like, oh, they didn't actually do anything. Like, didn't even open their mouth, didn't say a word. And the media was like, oh, they were taunting this guy. And they didn't say a word. And I was just so pissed at how easily, not just you or I, but we're all fooled. Because everybody had all these strong opinions on what happened, including myself. And then when I actually saw the full footage, I was like, I fell for it too. I believed it. I get so mad at the news because they just make crap up. And guess what happens with good news?
What?
It doesn't sell. Nobody wants to watch good news, so they can't sell advertising for it. So the more crap, the more drama, the more crap they put on there to get everybody riled up, the more people watch it, the more they can charge for their advertising. And it's all about money. It has nothing to do with you or I. It's all about money. And yet we're the product. And so the only answer to that, and you know, people hate it, shut it off. The only news I get on Facebook, and even that was enough to annoy me this weekend.
You know, they slide it in, right? But I get all my news, Scott, to be honest with you, from my friends. I know I'm going to hear about it sooner or later, right? But I wanted to ask you for my viewers. I don't know what people look at, but I haven't personally watched the news since 2010. And I'm just curious, when was the last time you watched it? Because I don't, you know, successful people that I know don't watch the news.
It was after 2010 because we were still transitioning with the boom and bust then. So it was probably closer to 2012 since I finally completely stopped watching it.
Nice. Yeah, you hear that, class? Well, successful people, class. If I could just count it.
Every now and then you may be watching a show, right? And the news is on next or whatever, and you'll see just so it's on. And it doesn't take 5 minutes till like this person got killed in the neighborhood you were in, this person got abused, all these things, and then you're like, why did we shut this off? It's nothing. I mean, it's all it will put you to bed depressed every night. I mean, it's just nothing but horrible stuff. Put you to bed depressed every single night. Wake up in the morning, start your day off depressed. I mean, there's no reason to watch it.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott. Class, I want you to hear it coming from a successful real estate entrepreneur that owns 100+ houses. You're not hearing it from me. You're coming from Scott. I want you to hear. He doesn't watch the news. Cut it off. Cut it off. So you said, I want to talk about your rental property, Scott, because when you meet people in the streets, no doubt, they look at you like a landlord, but you are far from that.
Yeah, we operate like a bank. We process payments. We don't do any repairs. We don't have any emergencies. We operate just like a bank.
So let's just say rentals versus what, land contract, you said?
We call them slow flips, but yeah.
Okay, rentals versus slow flips. Is that for our viewers? I want to kind of make sure they get the picture in their mind.
Correct.
So you do this because of basically repairs, or tell us if you could do a comparison, Scott. We got a typical landlord here. Is that when they see you, they don't know you're this.
Right.
You know, they think you.
Let me tell you a statistic that people always argue with me on, but if people that actually analyze their data, I'm right. Repairs on rentals average $300 per month. Now, when I first hear that, when I was first showed that, I said, no, you're absolutely wrong. I go several months, I have no repairs. And they're right. But what happens is if you track it over time, it could be 3 years from now. You might have had no repairs, but then you have a turnover and you have to carpet it and paint it and put in new appliances. Well, that was $6,000. Well, that was 2 years of $300. You know what I mean? And if you track it over the course of your ownership, it averages $300 per month. Yet all these other guys who teach you the leverage model, they teach you to make on average of $100 to $300 a month positive cash flow. And I'm like, well, that's not your money even. That's a loan. They're giving you that money, and then when it's vacant, you have that big turnover. You got to put it all right back in there. You're working for the bank for 30 years. Slow flips is exactly the opposite. I put somebody in there, they give me $3,000 to $5,000 down, and then I am just the bank. I go to my PO box, I collect the checks, I deposit them. I have private lenders, I pay out checks too, and that's my involvement. That's it. I don't do anything else with the properties. If somebody was to call, and I tell them this when we actually meet to do paperwork, but if somebody was to call and say, oh, I have a leak under the sink, I would say, well, do you need me to give you some numbers of plumbers? You know, it's not our issue. And I tell them that exactly when I do the paperwork. I say, if you have any repairs, you know, if you have a leak under the sink, call a plumber, don't call us. You wouldn't call Bank of America, don't call me. And that's exactly what I tell them. We operate just like a bank.
That was one of my questions here. I wanted to talk to you about. I got that from you. If something breaks, don't call me. The speech that you give these tenant buyers when you sit down with them to do the paperwork. So we just covered that.
And there's a lot of benefits to them. Like, oh, so I want to squash something too, in case some people on here are thinking you're taking advantage of people, or you know, that's
slumlord.
Yeah, or you're ripping people off for this and that. And let me squash that real quick, because the truth of the matter is exactly the opposite's true. If in fact we did not sell to these people, right? If we didn't sell to them, and you're like, well, you bought it for 30, you're selling it for 80. If I didn't sell it to them, they can't buy it for 30 because they don't either have the cash or have the knowledge to raise the private money. So they're looking for something that can be owner finance. Number two is their other option would be to rent. On average, the same amount of money for rent, only in 30 years, they own nothing. And they can't make it however they want, and they can't get a dog, and they can't know that in a year they're not going to get a rental increase. Or I decide I want to sell, and then say, oh, here, we're not renewing your lease, I'm selling it. This gives them structure, and it's their home for the long term. One more thing I want to touch on, 90% of all of our customer base are tradesmen. And it's critical, because if the person was not a tradesman and had to hire somebody to do this work, it wouldn't make any sense. If they had to pay out the money to do the work, they might as well just buy a house that's already move-in ready, and not buy one that's a handyman special or a contractor special. So most of our people are tradesmen, and they go and do the work themselves. It costs them a fraction, if anything. They do the work themselves, and they move into it and make it their own.
Nice, yeah. You know what? I hear you when I'm out here, Scott. I promise you, I hear you in the back of my head when I'm pre-screening my tenants. A lot of my guys, they either manage or they used to live in apartment complexes and like manage these huge apartment complexes, and they want their own house.
Right. So I'm going to tell you an extreme. So people always ask, well, what about the condition, right? What about the condition? This one is missing this, or it's dirty, or it's covered in beer bottles, and cereal boxes. And so I'm going to tell you two things on that. Well, I'm going to tell you a story that just happened today. First off, when the condition is less than perfect, the way I answer it, and this is important for whoever's listening, if you're interested in doing this, when somebody says, well, what about all the beer bottles in the place? Are you going to clean that up? Or what about, you know, the drywall's hanging down in the kitchen? Are you going to fix that? My answer is always no, and you're lucky we didn't do it yet. Because once we do it, it's going to probably make it another $5,000 or $6,000 on the down payment, but I'm sure you can get it done a lot cheaper than that. No, you're lucky we didn't clean up all the garbage yet, because our guy will probably charge us $1,000 or $2,000, but you could probably do it with your kids and it'll cost you $50. You're lucky we didn't clean the lawn, mow the lawn, because our guy will charge us $250, which we just got to pass along to you. So you can probably get it done for $30. And they're like, oh, no, don't do anything, please. I'll take it just the way it is.
Don't.
So I'm going to tell you an extreme story that just happened today. So I purchased a lot of properties, one batch of 24 houses, and I did not properly inspect everything. And because I knew the area, I knew the houses, and one of them inside had fire damage, and it wasn't like smoke damage, it was fire damage. It was pretty rough in there, and I wasn't mad because I got such a good deal on it. I said I could throw that house away, and it was still a really good deal, right? But we still try and market them all. Well, today we did a deal on that house. I only got $2,000 down, mind you, $2,000 down and $600 a month. Sold it for $49,000. I paid $12,000 for it, and it was a fire damaged house. So it's literally like in my head, I'm like, if I could sell that house, I feel like there's nothing that you can't find a buyer for. Oh yeah, but that one's in too bad of condition. I'm like, if you saw this one today, there is nothing in too bad of condition. Somebody who's in the industry, for them, it's just the work they do, and they can come and make it their own. And now he's gonna yes, he's gonna put some money and time into it, but then he's gonna have a $600, $650 a month payment forever. Where if he was to rent anywhere else, he's gonna have $900, $1,000, and $1,200. and now he owns. So
Nice.
it's a win for our buyers as well. It's not just for us.
What my mission statement? I want to hear yours, Scott. My mission statement when I'm doing and we're going to get to lease options versus land contracts in a minute. My mission statement when I talk to my tenant buyers is we provide home ownership for people that can't necessarily go out and get a loan.
Absolutely.
What is your mission statement, Scott?
That's exactly what we say. We provide affordable housing. We consider ourselves an affordable housing provider. That's what we consider ourselves, because without us, there's so many people that cannot qualify for anything. Like they may have a good job. I'm going to tell you something else you're going to laugh at, and I can't see people's faces to see if they're laughing or not. But so our signs, and you probably do the same thing. Our signs that we use to fill the property, we use white signs with black magic marker on them. But this is the part you're going to laugh at. We misspell the words on purpose. We misspell like cheap house, and it'll say CHEEP, or I misspell a bunch of stuff on it. And the reason I do it started on accident years ago. I accidentally misspelled something, and my phone rang off the hook. I got the house done the next week, and I picked up the signs and put them back in my office. Well, a couple weeks later, one of the guys that worked for me was in the office, and he says, "What's a CHEP house?" And I was like, "Excuse me?" He says, "What's a CHEP house?" And I accidentally wrote CHEP, CHEP house. Well, then it dawned on me. I said, I wonder if that phone was ringing so crazy. So I started testing it. Nice looking signs, crappy looking signs. The crappy looking signs, 10 to 1, the response you get.
Wow.
But I found out the reason why. It's not 10 to 1 in every segment of the population. It's 10 to 1 with my people. And the reason is they're used to being turned down. So our people, mostly tradesmen, get paid in cash. They don't have a regular W-2 that they can prove their income. They make plenty of money. They can afford it, but they can't prove it. So what happens is they go to people with the fancy signs, and they get told it's a $50 application fee, which they have to pay every single time. And then they say, sorry, you've been declined. When they see a CHEP house, they're like, that's a guy I can work with. And so the phone rings off the hook, and they're happy that they have somebody who's not asking them for a blood sample, DNA, and all this stuff. If you have a down payment, you're good with me. And that's it. And they know that when they see those signs. And so the phone rings crazy off the hook.
That is so crazy, Scott. So you listen to that class. Good God, this should be $100 class here today. Misspell words because that is the category. It's more welcoming per se.
Well, they realize you're a person and not some big company. When you have a nice looking sign, they know what's coming, and they've been here before. An application fee and then denial. That's what $50. Sorry, you haven't been approved. $50. Sorry, you haven't been approved.
Do you do application fees, Scott?
I do not. I do not do applications. People hate this as well. I do first come, first serve. First come, first serve. If you have the down payment, you're in.
Wow.
So let me tell you why I do that. Because fair housing, there's so many discrimination suits and laws that the fact that you either have to make strict criteria or no criteria. You can do any criteria you want, but it has to be uniform against all your houses. And so what I've decided years ago is, let me tell you something about you're going to laugh when I say this, but people with horrible credit had excellent credit the day before they stopped paying their bills. People with a criminal record had a clean record the day before they got caught. Doesn't mean they weren't still a criminal. Just the day before they got caught, they had a clean record. Mm-hmm. Well, what I found is no matter how much I screen them, I still get the same amount of people that end up not paying. I still get the same amount of people that end up getting into trouble. And so I made it a strict first come, first serve policy. There is no qualification process. The first person to come and give me the $5,000 is the one who gets the keys, and that's it.
Wow. Now, did you always do that, Scott?
No, I used to do the opposite, and it was more or less spinning wheels, because I would screen the hell out of them and they would still default. They have excellent credit, excellent job, all this stuff, and then they would still end up the same percentage would still end up defaulting.
So basically, you're saying it doesn't matter whether you get an application or not. You're good.
Yeah, I don't charge them any application fee. I don't do any application. I have them fill it out the same day we're doing the paperwork.
I might have to change the way I'm doing this, Scott.
Dabble in it. It takes a little bit of time.
Yeah. Plus, I'm like, I don't really care about the application fee. That's irrelevant to me, really. If somebody gives me an application fee, then I know that they're serious sometimes. But
if they give you $5,000, they're serious too.
That was a joke, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm saying they give you $5,000, that's their down payment. You know they're serious.
You're daggone right. All right, I got to get to my class real quick, Scott. Why are you doing? Because we do more lease options. Lease options versus land contract? Scott, go.
So there's a simple answer to that. So I used to do lease options, and I loved them until I lost in court because
What happened?
I had a tenant.
What happened?
I had a tenant buyer who did a lot of work to the property. Then they defaulted. We were in court, and they started showing all their receipts and everything they did. And the judge was on the verge of telling me I had to foreclose. He was saying that I am bound because it's a lease option. I'm still bound by the Landlord-Tenant Act. You can't just write into a lease, oh, the tenant's responsible for all repairs. You can write it in, but in court, the judge is like, oh, hell no. You have to provide running water. You have to have flushing toilets. You have to have heat. So if the heating system gets stolen and you did the same slow flip plan, you are the landlord. It's a lease option. You're a landlord. You have to put in a new heating system. You have to fix the plumbing. You have to do these things by law. So I lost in court one time, and the judge explained this all to me very carefully. And he told me these are the words he used. He said, benefits and burdens. Benefits and burdens have to stay together. He says, what you're doing now is you're keeping the benefit and giving them the burden. And so I spoke with him about it, and it, we talked about doing the owner. We didn't say land contract. We just said owner financing. And he said, that's fine, as long as they get the benefits and the burdens, or you keep the benefit. Like a landlord keeps the benefits and the burdens. The benefit being the appreciation, the depreciation, and the burdens being the maintenance. A lease option, done the way I used to do it anyway, I gave them all the burdens. I still had the benefits. So that's why he said you're not allowed to do that. So with the land contract, the contract for deed, the benefits and burdens both convey.
They all go to. So we're doing leases separate than the option. Is it how you were doing it as well?
Separate documents, right?
Wow, you still got burned. Well, what was the outcome of that one? What do you mean you lost?
I had to appeal it to circuit court, and then I won in 6 seconds. But it took me 14 court appearances in district court, and it took me. It started in June. It didn't end until November, where she was still in the property. Yeah.
Wow.
Normally a 6-week process. It took me all the way to November, and once I finally lost, then I went to circuit court and I won in 2 seconds because circuit court strictly follows the law. But so after that,
what were they suing you for, Scott? All they could get is the repairs?
Nope. She was saying I did all this work. It was a joke, and I can kill an hour telling you about it. But she was saying she did all this work to the house, and she had invoices that she made up, and I even proved in court that she made them up because. I know I'm off topic, but she had like one from plumber, from electric, but I can read the numbers. They were all from the same receipt book, one after the other. But yeah, one said like ABC Electric, one was, discount plumbing, and I'm like, and I showed the judge, and I said, well, you can see these were all from the same receipt book, yet she said one was in June and one was in May, and I'm like, clearly she's lying. And the judge said, well, do you swear under oath that these are real receipts? She said, yes, and he says, well, I'll accept it. I'm like, okay, so you're just trying to make me lose here. So
I guess I'm trying to figure out what are you losing if you were to lose? I mean,
she was suing me for all the alleged work she did.
Oh, she wants you to reimburse her.
Yeah, like $25,000.
Oh wow!
And mind you, once she got out and I saw the house, she did nothing to the house. So literally, she had to think of a paintbrush. But nevertheless,
oh my Lord,
yeah,
unbelievable. All right, last thing is that's it. That's all the questions I had, Scott.
All right.
Let's get to. You got time to get to our viewers?
Yeah, I'm good.
Let's do it. I'm so thankful. Class, I'm interviewing Scott Jelinek, one of my mentors. Whenever I get into a serious bind, I call Scott, and he, for the majority of the time, you have the answer, Scott. Thank you.
You are very welcome.
Any questions you got, go ahead and throw here. Let's go ahead and get rocking and rolling. Q&A. I love Q&A. It's my favorite part of the classes. Sorry about the Chris. Does your subject to documents work for Texas? Yeah, you can buy, Scott, we can buy a subject to in no, we're doing lease what are we doing in Texas? Owner financing. Subject to in Texas, Scott, what are we doing in Texas?
We're doing lease laws in Texas, but I know people who are doing slow flips there. But Texas is a different animal, so I'm not a lawyer, and I'm definitely not in Texas, so I don't want to give the wrong advice because I know in Texas you have to use all of their, like we have rain here. I think theirs is called TREG, T-R-E-G,
gotcha.
And you have to do all your contracts on the TREG contract. So I'm not certain for Texas. I know they have a lot of different rules out there.
Yeah, Chris, I'm not sure on that one. Even on subject to, I'm not quite sure. We're doing subject twos here all day, Scott. I mean, you're the person.
Subject to right here, but I know some states they consider them illegal. Virginia is not one of them.
Thank God. T.B. Williams. Hey, Tyler. We've been instrumental. Tyler, thank you. Northern California. Hey, any questions you got? Steven wants to know, how do you fill out a memorandum Scott, I have my document called my deal insurance, which is my memorandum. Are you familiar with that?
Yep, and you record your contract that's being worked on. Yeah.
Tell me about it. Are you using that too, or you don't care if the seller backs out at all?
So you're talking about forgetting slow flips. You're talking about in my wholesale business.
Yeah, just I'm trying to get to my viewers' questions, and they just have some questions.
So no, I do not do the memorandum of contract unless the only time, and it rarely happens, unless I start getting a seller who's getting flaky and saying, oh, well, I have somebody else who offered me more, and I have to have that difficult conversation saying, well, sorry, we have a ratified contract. I may record it at that time, but typically I don't. I've done over 700 wholesale deals, and I think I've had 3 instances where I had to enforce something.
You know, Scott, I don't know if it's your sensibility and your character and your posture and the way you talk. I've had about 12 people try to back. The reason I created what I call the deal insurance is because people were just freaking backing out on me, Scott.
Wow.
Do you think your posture? Go ahead.
I haven't had much in the way of that at all.
Wow.
I can remember all 3 of them. Yeah, and it's
really.
Yeah.
I've had a lot on me, so I want my class to know that everybody's going to have a different experience. That is not my experience. Scott has a different experience with that. Can you wholesale a pre-foreclosure?
Yeah.
Steven wants to know. Yes.
Absolutely. A pre-foreclosure, it has not been foreclosed on. It's still owned by the same. It's owned by the seller. The deed's still in his name. He can sell it just as any other house all the way up to the day of the auction.
That's right. Beats, hey, happy Martin Luther King Day to you, Roundup family. Yes, Steven, I was listening to you about lease options. Heard him say you lost 40,000. Can you make more money on lease options? Steven, that's going to be a question. Can you make more money on lease options? Steven, I'm not quite understanding your question. I'm sorry, brother. Tyler, seller side only HUD. Yes, you got to enforce that stuff. When did you start using seller side only, Scott?
I think it was about 2009, 2010. After I probably spent, I hate to say it, like $300,000 to $400,000 over the years in saving people's feelings before I actually learned about seller side only HUDs.
Good God Almighty!
And I don't do a closing without them.
Somebody, Caps Kids says, Scott, you are the best. They love you.
Hey, thank you.
Caps Kids. Danny, hey, good evening. Robert, North Carolina. Oh, Danny wants to know, what market are you in, Scott?
I'm in Hampton Roads, very close to where Chris is. I'm in Virginia Beach, Norfolk, all 7 cities of Hampton Roads.
The reason I interviewed Scott, he's one of my mentors' class, and he's right here. I've known him before he turned into a guru. Remember we had that lunch that one time, and it was just like...
Absolutely.
Scott, you have opened up my mind, dog. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
There were so many things that were still so new to me. And, much like we talk about with properties where people say, oh, you can't do that. We hear it enough, we start to think you actually can. And then what happens when people be like, no, you can do it. Next thing you know, you can do it. It's amazing how that works.
You're right, Scott. And you know what? At the end, I want to ask you about internet too, before we get out of here. Eddie, it's Danny, luxury car store. Hey, it's Scott. Robert Welch wants to know: are you buying directly from a bank, Scott, or are you typically doing FSBOs?
I shouldn't say almost 100%. I do direct to seller. So I do a lot of marketing and I meet directly with the seller. The only time it won't be direct with the seller is if I buy from other wholesalers. And I'll tell you how and why I buy from other wholesalers. These slow flips, this is interesting, a thing I didn't mention earlier. So this is kind of important. And I know you're on question and answer, but I'm going to take you off topic again. The properties that we buy are, I call them, they're in real estate purgatory. Nobody wants them. The rehabbers don't want them because there's no retail market to there. So these houses, if you were to fix them all up and make them in top-notch shape, you couldn't sell them because there's no retail market there. The regular people that do conventional rentals don't want them because what do they all teach? You don't want to buy in these low-end areas because they're too high management. Slow flips, there's no management. But if it was a conventional rental, I wouldn't buy it either. So they're in real estate purgatory. Nobody wants them. So I see other wholesalers sometimes will put out a house and I'll read the address and the price and I'm like, man, that's a good deal. But I don't call them. And I'll wait another week, and that house is still there. And then finally, if I'm in the area, I'll call and say, hey, you still got that house? And now I have a lot of leverage because they haven't sold it in the month they were trying to. I get it as cheap as possible. And sometimes I look at them and I'm like, holy, what a deal. And they couldn't sell it for this price. I mean, and they're nice houses. And I get them from other wholesalers, and it always shocks me that they're in the business and still don't see its value.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, Scott, would you have to agree that you're in a unique type of cash flow purchasing asset, though, brother?
And what do you mean by unique?
Unique is you're looking for the crap that the majority of people
Right.
are not even looking for.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. Most people do not want them.
Danny, I was in the heat this morning. Oh, they're talking about the heat now. Steven Jurasek wants to know, how do you find the majority of properties, Scott?
Mostly through our own marketing. We do signs like everyone else. We do direct mail. We recently started the ringless voicemail. We do all of our regular guerrilla marketing, but then also I'm on everybody else's list as well. I'm on all the other wholesalers' list because a lot of these properties we don't even want.
Ringless voicemail. We just did a class on that last week. That internet is something, isn't it, Scott?
It's changing. I mean, I'm not tech savvy at all, but I know how to do what I know how to do. But I'm not tech savvy at all. I figure it out.
What's your opinion, Scott? Well, in my opinion, I think the world has come everywhere I go. Everybody's like this. This is what I see everywhere. How are you taking that all in, Scott?
Yeah, and I'm that way too, and I hate it. Like I can't stand how often I even look at my own phone, and I try not to, but it's an addiction. But on top of that, like I do my own events, and I have Facebook marketing going, and so I constantly have to check it. And by doing that, once you're on, then you look at everything else, and there's no way around it. I mean, that's the way it is. I sometimes miss our little old flip phones, and I'm envious of people that still have dumb phones. I'm like, man, that must be nice. You don't have to look at it unless it rings.
I miss it too, Scott. But would you say that is the way it's going, whether you like it or not?
Oh, absolutely. And we can't, like, if you think of all the different things we use our phones for, it's incredible. I mean, not just I film all my videos with my phone. I do all my stuff with my phone. But not only that, my amortization calculator's on my phone. You can do contracts. You sign them right on your phone. You can type them out right on your phone through the file share services, slides. When you're doing a presentation, you can have all your slides on there. Basically everything. Everything you can possibly do, you're carrying around in your pocket.
Wow. Robert wants to know, will this work, Scott, for purchase prices larger than 30,000, and why is 30? Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I can tell you how I came up with 30,000. So yes, it'll work with larger purchase prices. The reason I capped it at 30 is because of the short-term amortization makes my payment 667. The average rents for those type of properties are about 875. So like I bought some for 40,000 and I paid the 10 grand out of pocket because it won't work. The numbers will be upside down. And people say, yeah, but it's only 5 years. So I could lose $100 a month. You can, but you're going to learn to hate these things real quick if you're losing money every single month on it. Plus, you can't scale. If you're coming up negative, you can't scale because $100 a month, maybe you can sustain it. But now if you buy 10 of them, it's $1,000 a month. You're going to learn to hate this business, and you're going to get out just as fast as you got in if you're not at minimum breaking even. So that's the reason I keep them at 30,000. Now, if you found a lender with a lower interest rate, then clearly you can tweak that. You might be able to say, oh, at 8%, the payment's only this, so I can go up to 35,000 or go to 40,000. The only thing I don't want to do, and I don't want you to do, is to start tweaking the term, because that's where people say, yeah, but how about instead of 5, we'll do an 8-year or a 10-year? Well, that's a slippery slope till you're right back to 30 years. And I know 10 years is still way better than 30, but it's a slippery slope. 5 years goes by like this. 5 years goes by in a flash. When you start extending the term because you can buy better properties, I feel that's a slippery slope till next thing you know, you're in the long-term landlord business again, waiting for someday.
You just made me think of something. I'll ask it after we get through our channel. Okay, class, let's get to the next one. That was a good one, Robert. I haven't watched TV for 2 years. Good for you, Ultimate Bargains. Ultimate Bargains has a book, man. I'm reading it now. Danny. Oh, Danny didn't look at TV either. Mr. Transaction. Hey, Eddie, they got the masses enslaved. Everybody's talking about the news now, Scott.
Yeah, it's true.
Ultimate Bargains. Scott, have you tried buying apartment buildings with hard money, $30,000 a door? And
I have not. I'm sorry, I have not, but I am open to it. I've looked at some that I said, hey, if I can still make the math work to pay it off in 5 years, I was interested in it. But I'll tell you what I would do as a twist. And I have a couple duplexes I did this with, but I would do it if I had 20 unit, 40 unit. I would do the exact same thing, that I do with my slow flips, instead of me renting the units, I would find an investor who wants to take the whole building and get X amount of money down and have one payment coming from him and let him deal with them. Does that make sense? Because I don't want to go backwards into the, hey, my toilet's leaking. So like I have duplexes I've done the same thing with. At first I thought I couldn't do a duplex because I'm like, well, then I'm a landlord again. I said, no, I just did a slow flip to an investor, and then he rents both sides. I get one payment, and he's the one that has to deal with them as tenants. If I had a 20-unit apartment building, I would do the exact same thing, to where I would find an investor. Now, if you were talking about real apartments, 250, 300 units, you know, you're not going to get them at 30 the door most likely anyway, but then it would be different. You can have on-site management and actually handle that as a separate business. But if you're talking 10 units, 20 units, I would still be interested in the 5-year plan, but I would sell it to an investor instead of renting out each unit independently.
That is exactly what I'm consulting somebody now in Fredericksburg, Scott. If you don't have the experience or the wherewithal to manage all these tenants, Scott, would it be better just to bundle it up and basically you're turning into the bank for another investor?
Exactly. And you know what? And this is where I come up with Mr. Burns in the building. Go to any downtown. Now you live in the other side of the water, but you've been downtown Norfolk. You've been to a bunch of major cities throughout the United States, and look up at any of the tall buildings. And what do they all have in common? Banks.
Banks.
All the banks in those buildings. Well, why do you think that is? Because we're all sending them checks. So this is the exact same thing, only we're on the opposite end of that check. The checks are being sent to us.
I love it, Scott. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Network. Yes. How important is it, Scott, to have a good network? Eddie Bean kind of touches to that.
So, you know, that's not just a clever saying. What do they say? Your net worth is equal to your net worth. It's really true. So I have a few groups that I'm a member of, and you know, and I think about it over the years. You know, one group in particular I've been in for 10 years now, and we meet monthly for 10 years. And I think about now how many things in my life have evolved just from that group. And you know, it's amazing. It's amazing the difference of people, the difference in your own mind, like you were just talking about. You know, seeing things that become possible. I didn't know that was possible, so you start doing it, and then I start doing it, and then we start doing new things because we see someone else is doing it. I can remember a time, this is interesting, where I thought the goal was to be successful. I thought people who make $100,000 a year are successful, and I was like, so once you get there, you feel like, okay, I'm at the top of the chain. Until you start hanging around with people who are making $1 million, $2 million, $3 million a year, and you're like, man, I got to step up my game. And it changes your whole mindset when your network is. When you're not the smartest guy in the room, when your network is above you, it changes your whole mindset and it makes you step up your game, because now it's real. If I was making $100,000 a year and I had a circle of friends who were making $100,000 a year, and somebody said, well, I want to make $1 million a year, what's everybody going to say?
You can't do that.
$1 million a year, come on, get realistic. But if all your friends are making $1 million a year and you're making $100,000, you know it's real, you know it's doable. It's just a matter of, okay, what do I have to do to get there? And so there's nothing more important than your network. But on top of that, and I know I rant, so if you need to cut off.
Oh, go ahead, Scott.
Not just your network, but also, and this is harsh, I know, I always tell people, I said, you got to fire your loser friends. And it's sad, but it's true, because they will, as much as your network can pull you up, you're non-motivated, what I call your loser friends, even they might be the best of friends. It doesn't mean you can't be friends anymore, but you are the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. And if those 5 people have no motivation and they're basically a loser mentality, they will drag you into it. And you have to control who you hang out with. I heard a saying once, and I really liked it, and I don't know exactly how it went, but they said if you lock a positive person and a negative person in a room, 2 negative people come out. And I remember thinking, I said, that is so true, because when you hang around a negative person, it just burns on you and you become that way. And the same thing happens in reverse. If you hang around with a bunch of positive people, you almost hate yourself for thinking anything negative, because you're like, man, mine ain't that bad. Everybody else is being so positive. And you have to control. You have to make a conscious effort to change your circle of friends. Level up.
That's almost like a habit.
People in your person in your group, you're in the wrong group. That's all.
Say that again.
If you're the most successful person in your group, you're in the wrong group. Doesn't mean you still can't be friends with them and help them, but you need a new group for yourself to get you to the next level.
Wow. Scott, you're preaching today, brother. Good God, I see the internet is on fire. All right. Social media causes drama too. That's true, Danny.
Yeah.
Social media, yep. Q&A. Design your business model to be as close to the money as possible. Ultimate Bargains is saying that, yes. Mr. Transaction Eddie wants to know, how much do you charge? How much do you pay We covered that, but you can cover it real quick, Scott. How much do you pay your private lender, Scott?
12%.
Yep,
I pay
12%.
12%.
Eddie. Informed senior. There's a lot of pushback on wholesaling in her market, Oklahoma City. Should I go forward and wholesale in my market or virtual wholesale in other markets, Scott?
So I have friends in Oklahoma that are wholesaling. They do really well with it. I'm not sure what you mean. When you say pushback, do you mean legal pushback? Because
We'll get back to that.
yeah, because I know Oklahoma's a good market. I know friends out there who are wholesaling doing really well out there.
Gotcha. Robert Welsh, yes, tradesman is who we're looking for. Stephen Jurasek, do you market the properties as rent to own, Scott?
No, I say owner will finance, no credit check. 5,000 down, 875 a month. Owner will finance.
Gotcha. Danny, did I figure out my dilemma from Chris? I don't know. Okay, Stephen wants to know, how do you qualify your tenant buyers, Scott?
Cash in hand. So I know a lot of people don't like this. The only thing we check, and I don't even do it much anymore, is I used to check their eviction history. If they had multiple evictions, that was the only thing I used to disqualify them with. But if they had money, if they had the 5,000 down or 3,000 down, whatever I was asking, then I wouldn't do any checks on it. Now I still do that kind of check, but I only do it if, like, say it's 5,000 down and they're like, well, I only have 3,000 today, but I'll have the other two on the 15th. Then I will check their eviction history. And if they have no evictions, I may work a deal with them, but that's the only thing I check. I don't check any credit. I don't check criminal history. I don't check any of that. Because again, I'm selling the house. Now, if you have apartments, I know we touched on apartments. If you have apartments, it's critical to check them. Because one bad tenant in an apartment can destroy the whole complex, but these are single family homes. So no, I don't do any specific checks on them.
Gotcha.
First come, first serve.
Eddie Beams. Oh yeah, please, class, make sure you mash the thumbs up button down there for our optimization purposes for Scott. Darren in San Francisco. This is the ultimate game.
It is. You're the bank.
Los Angeles. Hey, Eddie, there in Los Angeles. Ultimate Bargains wants to know, how are you going to handle the Dodd-Frank qualification requirements, Scott?
So that is a great question. So Dodd-Frank doesn't apply when you sell to an investor, and it doesn't apply to when you sell to anybody that's non-owner occupant. And so that's basically our market. We try and market to tradesmen, and we try and market to investors. As far as when you do sell to somebody who is going to live in it, there's a few qualifications. You have to put them through what do you call it, underwriting, which we don't. We try and have it so I think you're allowed to do up to 3 now per entity that has them, and so we try and limit it to what our exposure is with it. But most of ours end up being with investors or with tradesmen who are keeping them. We have a lot of tradesmen who they buy them and renovate them for their crews, like they're construction guys, and they buy them and renovate them, and then they rent them to their people. And so all of those people, which is, I think I did the math the other day, out of 108, I think 80 of mine are non-owner occupants. They're all investors or tradesmen who are doing it with their crews, or they're keeping them as rentals themselves.
Nice.
We don't do a lot with the Dodd-Frank. We still cross our fingers every day as one of the promises that they're going to repeal Dodd-Frank, but as of now, that hasn't happened. But as of now, we mostly just deal with non-owner occupants. I'll tell you another gold mine we kind of got into is we have people that are pastors of churches that I have one guy that's got 11 of these from me, 11. And what he does is he buys the property. The church people all volunteer to do the paint, the windows. They all are tradesmen in there within the flock, right? So they all volunteer to do it. And then he rents it to somebody within need within his church. So he's doing it for himself as far as building value long term, but he's also significantly helping out all these people. And he doesn't have to worry about the cost of their repairs because they're all donating their time for it. We have 3 different pastors now who are doing the same program with us, and that's another thing that's been fantastic.
Wow.
And again, no Dodd-Frank in any of that either, because anything that's non-owner occupant, you're out of Dodd-Frank with.
Wow, nice. Williams wants to know about the criteria. Oh, Dodd-Frank. Okay, she wanted to know about that. But she's only doing one. She did a one lease option. I mean, if you're doing one of these, Scott, are you falling under the Dodd-Frank?
If you're doing one, you can do it. You can do whatever you want. I think you can do up to 3 without having to fall into anything.
Nice. Okay, class. Put questions here. I got a couple more. Class, this is a nice class. Scott, thank you. Thank you.
You are very welcome.
I lost my place. Good Lord. Danny Ramos. Oh, what about contract for deed versus? Oh, Ultimate Bargains wants to know, what about contract for deed versus seller finance and wraparound note with conveyance of title? Scott, what's your opinion?
So that is a fantastic question, and I'm going to tell you my opinion, and I'm going to tell you how that opinion came to be. So I used to, back in time, I used to do a lease option, and I would say if you paid on time for 36 months, then I would do actual owner financing. So do exactly like you said, put the deed in their name and do actual owner financing.
Break that down, Scott, for our viewers that don't know the difference, please, if you got 2 seconds.
So actual owner financing, there's a closing, and the deed goes into their name. They have a mortgage now, a regular full mortgage, just like they would get from a bank. Now I may have an underlying mortgage, which is what the wrap is. What's that?
I'm listening.
Okay, so I had this woman who rented a property from me for 3 years, and she paid perfect. On the first of the month, every month she paid perfect. 36 months goes by, and she says, I want to do the owner financing. I've been paying perfect for 3 years, and the paperwork, it says after 3 years I can do the owner financing. I said, no problem. You got to pay the closing costs. She agrees, no problem. So we go to closing. Deed goes in her name. We do an actual closing. Well, then, that was the last time she ever paid. So she called, pissed off that she called a mortgage company that was advertising, equity lines, equity loans. So she calls me up pissed off saying, you sold me a house with no equity. And I was like, excuse me? And she says, I tried to get a loan, but they said this house has no equity. And I said, well, ma'am, the way equity works is, you buy it for one price, and as you pay it down, the difference is your equity.
Over time.
She was pissed at me like I scammed her and sold her a house without equity, without knowing what the word equity even means. Anyway, so she never paid again. She moved out, so I didn't have to evict her, but I had to foreclose to get the title. It cost me $5,000. And so ever since then, I said, no more. I will not do that. Now, I have a couple people I did do it for, and let me explain to you how and why. Every now and then somebody says, can I do that? Can I do actual owner finance and get the deed in my name because I might want to refinance, or, whatever their reasons are, and I will agree to it, but I tell them I need an additional $5,000 down. And I tell them exactly why. I said, because if you default, it's going to cost me $5,000 to get you out. So I've had a few that have done it. They've given me the extra $5,000, and I've done actual closings, and I don't mind. So, and pardon me for ranting, because I know I rant a lot, but I'm just going to say this because you may be thinking in your head, there's so many solutions to that. There are solutions. Well, what if you put it in an LLC so that, or what if you have them sign, this is the better, what if you have them sign a deed into a foreclosure, a pocket deed, right? So then you don't have to foreclose. You can just take the property back because you have the deed. That's true because what if they got judgments while they owned it? The judgment's still attached to the property. If you take it back through foreclosure, it wipes it clean. If you take it back through a deed in lieu, they stay attached to the property. And so there's several different things that can happen. So you have to be prepared to foreclose even if you do those alternatives. I hope that answers your question. I know I'm long-winded, but I hope that answers your question.
That was a good one, Scott. So you, when you do the contract for deed, you're staying on title. How did you take title, Scott, to your properties?
So I have LLCs. I have multiple LLCs. I know you're into trust, right? And
yeah.
And I need to learn still more about trust. I started learning it, and I have multiple LLCs, and I keep them in LLCs.
You do LLCs. Okay. Well, I mean, obviously you know what you're doing, but it took me 3 years to understand, just from constantly getting banged in the head, Scott. I studied it for so long. Hey, my brother's here. Hey, Ronnie. How did that lease option work out? He wants to know a little bit about how that lease option going to court worked out, Scott.
So I lost. I lost in district court, and they granted her a judgment against me for $25,000. So I immediately appealed it, went to circuit court, and in circuit court we were in and out of there in like 4 minutes, and I won, and it was over. In circuit court, in district court, she was spewing all this crap, and he kept listening to everything she would say. In circuit court, he was like, did you sign this paper? And she's like, blah, blah, blah. He's like, did you sign the paper? And then she's like, yes. And he's like, did you pay the payment last month? And she's like, blah, 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 blah. Did you pay? And then she's like, that's it. And that was it. So he made her answer the question, not all the rant she was doing. And that was it. So we were literally in and out in like 4 minutes. I had 14 court appearances in district court. It went on for months. Finally lost. in circuit court, won in 4 minutes, and it was over.
Well, Scott, please tell me what about this 25,000? Typically, they require me to put it in escrow.
Yes, they did, and I did.
You put that, see, class, you got to hear the whole story, dog. Come on.
Yeah. If you lose in district court and you want to appeal it, you got to pay whatever you lost into escrow. So you're gambling basically real money. But I knew I was going to win. I mean, I knew I was going to win. It was just a matter of she had a judge that was just listening to. He even knew that the receipts were forged, and he just was like, "Oh, well, do you agree that you really paid these people?" And he accepted it. I mean, the judge was being an ass. That's just the way it is, you know.
Wow.
And in district court, they kind of do whatever they want to do.
They do. I've seen them do some crazy stuff. They're soft-hearted in there.
Yep.
Steven wants to know, when is your next class, Scott? Maybe we'll give them a discount or something. I have a link. We can work something out and help and get people to come to your next class. I don't know.
I don't have any links. I have. Are you in? Is he in my local market? I don't know who he is, but so I only do local. I only do local events, and so my next one's at the end of February. But I stay local. I don't travel around, and I don't do that type of stuff. So if you're local, you can talk to Chris, and I'm sure he'll give you my info. But if you're not, I really just do local events.
He's not local. I don't think so. My brother, he said he won in circuit court. What did you win? Oh, you didn't have to.
I won her getting evicted, and they squashed that judgment.
Gotcha. After you put the 25K in the bank in the escrow, though.
Yeah.
Scott, you got some big cojones to do that, brother.
Well, I mean, what are you gonna do? You can't ever win.
That's true. I'm saying most people be like, man, I'm just. Danny, when flipping a house with a partner, should we create a LLP or separate LLC for ourselves? Danny wants to know.
Again, I'm not a lawyer. You could even have a single LLC where you're just different. Like I have a partner in one LLC, and it's just in the operating agreement, our interest and our roles. If I own 80% and he owns 20%, and then our roles as to who's in charge of what, you can do it all in one LLC. You don't have to have single ones, and you don't have to have a partnership agreement. It's just a multi-member LLC.
Yeah, we just do joint ventures.
Yeah.
Robel, the great Scott. They're calling you the GOAT. You know what the GOAT is, Scott?
Yeah, I've heard that term once or twice after last night's game.
Carl, who pays insurance and taxes on your slow flips, and what type of insurance policy do they have?
This is a fantastic question. So I pay taxes and insurance, and I'm going to tell you why. When I started this, I used to let them pay. And I thought, that was great. This way I got to keep the whole payment and I didn't have anything going out. Well, then I did an eviction on a property. This was actually a commercial property in Portsmouth. And the guy had it for about 5 years, and he was great all along. And I owed $15,000 in taxes that he swore all along he was paying. And basically, it's attached to the property. So if you take the property back, you own it, and you owe the money. I had to pay it. And so ever since then, I said, no more. From now on, I pay the taxes. Insurance is another story. So right now, for years, I had everybody paying their own insurance. I'm sorry, I paid everybody's insurance. But now I found an insurance company. Mind you, this is in my area, so I don't know about your area. I found one insurance company out here who will insure my tenant buyers with a homeowner's policy. So now it's in my paperwork that they have to call this specific insurance company and get their own insurance policy. And they list me on it as additional insured, and I get notified if they have a lapse or don't pay. So now I have them pay their own insurance, but I still pay for the taxes.
So they pay their own insurance. I thought you paid.
I stopped just this past year. I found an insurance company. It's right off.
Okay. Gotcha.
That insures them now as homeowners, and it's better for them because before I would have a homeowner's policy and they would have a renter's policy. So if the house burned down, they just get their clothes and their stuff replaced. Now they get a new house and it's theirs.
Nice.
If there was a fire or there was an issue, they're the one that's on the policy. So it's better for them as well.
That's nice, Scott. And it puts a little more cash in your pocket too, 50, 60 bucks a month.
Yeah, every little bit.
Thanks, Carl. That was a good question. Kathy, hey, Kathy, you guys put your state. I want to know where you guys are raising your financial literacy today. Kathy, so it's better to do a land contract. Kathy wants to know, is it better to do a land contract instead of a lease option because it shows the benefits and burdens to the individual?
Correct. That's why I do land contracts now. Contract for deed is because exactly that. Because the lease, there's a lot of benefits to lease options, but I stopped after that one incident I had. I stopped with them.
Well, you got one out of what? I don't know, Scott. I mean,
I don't
you got, huh?
I don't like
What?
to lose twice. Losing once, I take it as a learning experience, but twice, I take it as it was my fault now. I knew better and didn't change.
It was you had two of these
No,
LOs?
that's why I changed, so it doesn't happen again.
Gotcha. Oh, Kathy's in Alabama. Okay, you're down in the lower Alabama. Sky Investments. Hey, my virtual mentor. Thanks for making life easier with slow flips. You are a genius.
Nice.
That's nice, Scott. I mean, I can see you. You have got to feel some admiration. I just remember like it was yesterday, us eating lunch, and you're like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. And it's like you just.
Well, it's interesting because in my head, I always wanted to. For those of you who are listening, I do local events here. I do seminars and I do coaching with people. But in my head, I always felt I wasn't going to do that until I retired. Like, as I felt, I guess it's part of a scarcity mindset, which I don't have, but I did in that space where I felt like, well, I don't want to train people to do that same business I'm doing. I don't want to train people to compete with me. And it wasn't until I got my mind right, when we were talking, and I was like, no, we can do it. And still everybody, there's enough for everybody. It's not a matter of, oh, if I teach you how to do something, there's going to be no deals left for me. There's plenty for everybody. And actually the opposite turned out to be true. There's more for everyone.
More.
We all work together, the more we all end up doing. And so it's worked out really well. But it's interesting. I remember having that lunch where I was like, you know what, we just gotta do it. Jump in and see what happens.
You was like, forget this. I mean, I remember your face. You're like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. And you walked out. But Scott, I'm like, as I get older, I'm looking at it's like the more I give, I don't know why is it like that? The master teacher says he was a great servant. Like the more I serve, it's like my whole situation just goes like this. It's like just
it's the funny thing is it's so true, but yet you can't ever convey it to somebody without them doing it. Once they do it, they'll come back to you and be like, you were right, it worked so well. But there's no way, because there's no logic behind it. There's no way to prove it.
it's backwards.
So there's no way to prove that by going out and being giving, you actually get more. Like I used to always say, I'm generous for selfish reasons. And people go, what does that mean? I say, well, I give a lot because I know it gives me back, and they're like, well, that's not, I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm very, very generous, but it's for selfish reasons because I know the more I give, the more I get. And so you just give a lot.
I think that with me, it took me, Scott. I want my viewers to know that it has taken me 40 years to grasp this concept, Scott. When did you grasp it and start living it?
I think I listen to a lot of Anthony Robbins and other podcasts and speakers, and they're constantly preaching it. And I have a good friend of mine, again, part of our circle, who he gives a lot of money every year, and he talks about how when he first started, he took a plunge, and he's like I couldn't believe I was going to write a check for this kind of money just to give it away, but he's like it just changed my entire life. As soon as I did it, it's so much more started coming in, and I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, really, really, come on. And, I know they teach you that in church, and they're always like, to give, and I don't know why, I just know it works. There's no way anybody can tell you it works other than for you to try it yourself. But
gotcha. Angelo, what is the difference between? Hey, Angelo, we covered it, but it's a question. I guess it didn't quite grasp it. Angelo wants to know what is the difference between the land contract and the lease option, Scott?
So a lease option is just that. It's a regular rental agreement and an option to purchase. Two separate documents. One is a regular rental, no different than you would get a lease if you were renting an apartment, and the other is you have an option to purchase. With a land contract, they are purchasing it. The deed may not be recorded, but they have an actual amortized 30-year plan to pay off the house. So they are purchasing it right now from day one. And I'll tell you what, I don't know about everyone's markets, but in some of our markets, and I'm sure you're in a lot of these, Chris, we have rental inspections where the city will say, oh, you have a rental here, we need to come in and do an inspection, send us $50. Then they're going to come in and tell you $2,000 worth of stuff you need to do. I've done one rental inspection in my life, and it was a disaster. And ever since then, I tell them, I said, nope, this is not a rental, and I'll say this is on the land contract, and they say, oh, thank you very much, we'll take you off the list. And I'm like, oh, so the city accepts it too, as they're the owner,
the city then deals with the new buyer?
Yeah, well, no, the new buyer doesn't need a rental inspection if they're occupying it.
Oh, they're owning. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and if they're not occupying it, the city doesn't know who they are anyway, because they only go by the tax records, absentee owner. So they send it to me, and I send them back saying it's not a rental.
Very sharp. Sky Investment. He does ugly slow flips. Yeah, ugly slow. Would you say this is more of an ugly slow flip type of a thing, Scott?
Yeah, my nickname has always been Ugly Scott. So yeah, so they're ugly. Some of them are. Now some of them are really nice. If I was if I was in a classroom right now with you, I would be able to show you videos of some of them, and your mouth would drop. That you would be like, "You bought that for how much? $20,000?" I have some videos online, and people look at them and they're like, "There's no way." And
Tell us one. Give us an example. Give us a visual, because I have my visual, Scott. But give us one visual.
so I have there's one I have a video on my YouTube channel where I actually went through and I did I showed them the house. It was great because I showed them the whole house, then showed them what I paid for it, and I bought this from another wholesaler, who you probably even know, and I bought it from another wholesaler. It's on Wickham in Newport News, and so I bought it for $20,000. I still borrowed the 30 at closing. After closing costs and everything, I left with a check for about $7,500. And then, so the house looks really nice, but to take it a step further, about 2 to 3 weeks later, after I got somebody in there, I sent by a guy that works with me to pick up the lockbox. So while he went to pick up the lockbox, the guy was sold it to, and he was there working on it. And my guy saw the condition of the house. And so he asked him, "Would you mind if I do a quick video?" The house was immaculate. The hardwood floors, new cabinets, granite countertops.
Oh my!
Remember, I paid $20,000 for this house. He's buying it for $89,000, paying $875 a month, but he made it macked out. He did new wood picket fence around the whole yard. The house is beautiful. Inside the bathroom, there's granite topper, the tile floors, the whole floors are shiny, beautiful. If you guys look, you're gonna watch this video and you're gonna be like, "Holy crap, $20,000!" People don't believe it actually exists. And then when you see it, you're like, "Holy crap!" And that wasn't like I found a scare with the earth for that. That was one another wholesaler had, and he couldn't get rid of it. He was stuck with it.
Nice.
Because it's in real estate purgatory. Nobody wanted it.
Purgatory. Chris Monroe, hey brother, welcome, my brother's back. What and Danny, what does? Oh, yeah, I don't know. Oh, people starting to talk crazy now. Stay the bank, Robert. Yes. Angelo wants to know, what type of contract do you use for that investor? I don't understand that one.
We use a land contract for the sale, if that's what he means, and a regular buy contract when you buy it.
That's just a regular, yeah. Use a regular purchase and sale agreement when you buy it.
Yep. And our contract for deed when we sell.
Your net worth is your net worth. Yeah, you lose your friends. That's a nice one. Fire your loser friends.
Yeah, I know a lot of people say that's harsh, but if you actually do it now, it doesn't mean you still can't be friends, but it can't be who you spend your most time with, because you are the average of the people you spend the most time with, and so you need to spend time with people who are trying to raise their game, not people trying to drag you down.
Scott, tell me about your sleeping habits, brother. Can I ask that? Is that too personal?
Yeah, I don't get enough probably. I go to bed generally about 11 o'clock every night because, I have a 9-year-old son. So by the time we get him to bed, I get maybe an hour at night with my wife before we go to bed, and then I get up at 6. So I get a good 7 hours.
So what would you, wow, that's pretty, I mean, so for somebody that wants to get into the business, does it have to be full-time for them, or can they do a part-time?
So you can definitely start part-time. I advise always to start part-time. My rule, I always tell people, I said, I want you, my coaching partners anyway, I want them to have 1 year's salary saved before they consider quitting their job. And the purpose for that is because it alleviates the pressure of, if I don't make money this month, I can't pay my bills, and that will drive a person crazy, and it'll make them quit. And so I want them to have a year's salary saved, and then they work off paying their bills from that year, and as they do deals, we keep replenishing it. But that's my personal thing. I say everybody should be part-time until you start building up a business and have that money saved.
Nice. You're banking on these people. Rashida wants to know, can the people pay off your loan in 5 years, Scott?
They can, but it would be, they can pay it off at any time, but they're paying it off for what I'm selling it for, which is $89,000. So yeah, they can pay it off at any time. If they had the cash or if they refied from a bank, they can pay it off anytime.
Joshua wants to know, just had a seller get cold feet right before signing. But had your deal insurance, brother. Do you think it's better to pre-screen and ask if they're ready to sign the day that we view the home to avoid that, Scott?
Pre-screening asking. So
I guess this is a regular.
5:20. So we're gonna have to go in like probably 10 minutes, but I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my showing system. All right. So this is another good one for you. So if you guys are really interested in this, you're gonna shake your heads. Some of you are gonna be like, "You're crazy. I would never do that. That's the worst thing in the world." But some of you are gonna be like, "Wow, that's well worth doing." So I'm gonna tell you my showing system, and this goes back when you said, "Should you ask them if they're ready to sign before you show it to them?" The first time I ever meet my people is when they show up at my office to do the paperwork. So I'm gonna tell you how I do that. First and foremost, you know I use my ugly signs, misspelled words, right? Well, the phone number that's on those signs, I didn't tell you this. I don't put signs in front of the house. I'll put them all around the neighborhood on the corners, but I never put it in front of the house, and I do that on purpose because I don't want to tell the whole neighborhood this house is vacant, right? So
why
then,
is that, Scott? Tell people why you don't want people to know.
Somebody kick in the door and take my stove and air conditioning, or just move in and be living there when I go to show it, someone else is there.
Gotcha.
So the next thing I do is I have a phone number system, which there's 100 different ones out there. I use one that it just gives me a bunch of different phone numbers, so I get a different phone number, right? So when they call, I use a system called leadsbytext.com, but there's a bunch of systems. So each house has a different phone number. So when they call, they don't know which house they're calling on. They just saw a sign that said owner will finance, no credit check, $3,000 down, $875 a month, handyman special, right? Well, then when they call, it says, "Hi, the house you're calling about is located at 123 Main Street. It's a 3-bedroom, 1 bath. It's a handyman special. It needs new toilets and painting done and blah, blah, blah. There's no credit check, and I will owner finance it with $3,000 down, $875 a month. Drive by 123 Main Street. Feel free to walk around the house, look in the windows, and if this looks like the house for you, then call me at," and then I give him my Google Voice number. Am I speaking too fast? You got me so far?
Mm-hmm.
So then I give him my Google Voice number. When they call, the first thing I ask is, "Did you already go by the house?" If they say no, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And the reason is, after you've done this for a while, people are time wasters. So they want everything answered before they even know if they want it. So they want me to waste 30 minutes, but they don't even know if they like the area. So I don't want to talk to you unless you've driven by and seen the house. There's nothing like Chris, and I'm sure you've done this 100 times, where you drive out to meet somebody, you spend 30 minutes driving, you get there, they pull up, and they're like, "Oh, no way I would live here." And thanks, you could have told me that yesterday before. Anyway. Yep. So that's the first step. So then they say, when they finally call, "Yes, I saw it. I'm interested. When can you show it to me?" I say, "I can show it to you anytime. Just try and give me an hour's notice. If I can't make it, I have a neighbor with a key." Follow me? Give me an hour's notice. I'm available anytime. If I can't make it, I have a neighbor with a key. Call me an hour in advance. And the reason for that hour in advance is so that I make sure I'm watching my phone, so I don't waste your time going out there and then I didn't answer when you called me. Next step, when they get there and they say, "Okay, it's an hour now, I'm gonna, are you good to meet at noon? It's 11 o'clock. I say, "Yep, 11 o'clock's fine." Again, I tell them, if I can't make it, I have a neighbor with a key. Call me when you get there. So then they call me when they get there. I'm watching now for the phone because they already told me they're on their way. When they get there, I say, "My neighbor just stepped out. However, since you're already at the property, I'm going to go ahead and give you the lockbox code and let yourself in. So don't go ahead and worry about it. If anybody comes back, just tell them Scott said it was okay. The code is 2008. So, and then I explain to them, I say, put the code to 2008, push the little black tab on the left down, the front of the box will fall forward, take the key out, open the door, put the key back in the box, spin the dial, take as long as you need, and call me when you leave." That has been my code since 2008. Just so I haven't had any issues whatsoever. So then they call me back when they leave. Sometimes they're like, "No, I hate it. Thanks for letting me look." Or sometimes they're like, "Yeah, so what's the next step?" And I say, "Well, if you know 100% you want it, as soon as you have the money ready and just text me all your information, I'll have the paperwork ready for you, and we do the paperwork right here in my office." And that's it. So the ones who want it, they really text me all their information, and then they come to my office. I have the paperwork ready. They come into the conference room. They give me the $5,000. We fill out the papers, and I tell them to have a nice day. Take the lockbox off the door. Next time you come in, if you can bring it with you, I appreciate it. I never go to the house ever. So I know we're going to have to go in a minute, but I want to tell you. So people say, "Well, you can't just give people your code. What if they steal your fridge? What if they do this? What if they do that?" The reality is they might. They might. And I'm okay with that. So I have not had it happen yet. Nobody stole or done anything. But can they? Absolutely. And I'm okay with it because think of the hundreds and hundreds of hours of my time I've saved. If someone steals a $500 refrigerator, I'm okay with it. I'll buy a new refrigerator. I won't even buy one. I'll sell it with no refrigerator in it. I'm perfectly well aware that somebody may do something at some point, but I'm okay with it. They've saved hundreds of my hours. I'm okay with it. So that's my showing system. I forgot where the question even led to that, but I just wanted to share that with you.
Well, Joshua also asked, how about the seller? Do you get the seller when you're buying it directly from a Facebook? Did you sign the contract with them at the time you go?
When I go on appointments with motivated sellers, I sign the paperwork generally on the spot. However, a lot of them we get through follow-up.
Yeah, they don't. In my experience, very rare, not rare, but the majority of people don't want to sign immediately. Is that your experience, or you getting people right there on the spot?
Probably about 30% of them will get on the spot, but 70% you get after the fact and follow-up.
And I can only present, wow, your posture with this, Scott, I believe is what's most attractive in these type of scenarios talking to people. It's like you know what you want. You don't have time to listen to all this craziness, and you got specific questions that you are asking them.
And you know what they want. That's the thing is I tell them the benefits and I tell them the pros and the cons. The big benefit to them is you don't have to worry about you're going to have to move your kid out of school next year because the owner decided he didn't want anymore, or that you get a $25 a year increase and eventually it's $1,100 a month where you start at $875. You can paint it, you can get pets, you can do anything you want. I always tell you, as long as it's within the limits of the law, you don't have to ask me anything. As long as the law says it's okay with me. The big burden is you're responsible for all maintenance and repairs. That's a big negative. If you don't have any money or the will or the ability to fix stuff, well, that's a huge burden. If you can't fix anything, you shouldn't do a deal like this. If the sink leaks and you have no money or ability to fix it, you're going to have a problem. And so I tell them that, we want people who understand the burdens.
So what about roofs and central heating and air, Scott? Do you have a line that you cross to make sure that you will do some repair?
So no, so definitely not central heat and air, because that's a Pandora's box. I never want to fix or do anything with central heat and air. As far as roofs, I have fixed a roof one time, and it was because it was a townhouse in Virginia Beach, and it was leaking through the house. The lady had no money, but I'll tell you the way I handle that. So if I have a person who is a good tenant buyer, and there's a repair that they just can't afford to do it, but they are good, then I will agree to do it and finance it to them. So in this case, it cost me about $2,500 for the roof, and I raised her payment. $100 a month went toward that $2,500. So she still paid for it. She paid it off, but I laid out the money. Obviously, have to protect the house, and this way she still got the roof done and paid me out $100 a month.
Robert Welsh wants to know. You good, Scott, on time?
Yep.
Robert wants to know tell us a little bit about your lifestyle at $20,000 a month. I don't know.
$20,000 a month was a while ago. We far exceeded that. We got 108 properties now. So I my lifestyle. This is what's really funny. This is a great question that you asked. My lifestyle hasn't changed that much, and something I'm going to tell you that's interesting. So during the boom, when I was on the debt mindset, you're going to laugh at this, but you're probably on the exact same page, Chris. When I was on the debt mindset, I had 2 Cadillac Escalades. I had a Cadillac XLR convertible, $105,000 convertible. I loved that car. It was beautiful. If you guys haven't seen a Cadillac XLR convertible, you should Google it. Beautiful, beautiful car. I was all into all this crap, right? You know what I drive now? You'll laugh, and I'll tell you how it came about. I drive a Honda Accord. I make more money than I have in my entire life, and I drive a Honda Accord. And the way that started is when I was interviewing these older guys after the bust. They were loaning me money, right? They're my lenders. They're loaning me money. I'm showing up in a $105,000 Cadillac convertible, and they're showing up in a Honda or a pickup truck. And they have tens of millions of dollars. They're the ones loaning me the money. And then after the bust, I started to think again, what went right, what went wrong, and what can I do different? And I was like, you know what? Maybe these old guys do know something, And so to this day, now I drive a Honda Accord, and people always laugh, and they're like, why don't you? I said, I don't need to. I'm perfectly content. It does everything I need it to do. So as far as lifestyle, I still work every day, but I enjoy working. I don't have the stress that I used to have. I travel a lot, but I travel like 12 weeks a year. I go away a lot, but I go to work every day. I mean, I may not, like, sometimes I felt overwhelmed, like I'm working too much, but then I sat with a friend of mine and he was like you would just ask me, what time do you get up? So I get up at 6 a.m. I'll watch some, YouTube videos or read, before anyone else in my house wakes up until about 7. Then at 7:40, I get in the shower. I drive my son to school. He's got to be in at 8. 8:15, I go to a gym. That's an hour long, 8:15 to 9:15. 9:15, I come home. Then I sit and vegetate and catch my breath. And by the time I actually get to the office, it's probably 11 o'clock. So if in fact, I'm for an hour, and then I go to lunch. So you're talking, so I maybe work 4 to 5 hours a day, but I felt like it was a lot because I had so much stuff to do. But it's not like it's not that much. Like today, I'm late. I'm looking at the time, and I was like, oh, it's 5:30 now because I'm at the office now.
But now this is work, though, Scott. Going to the gym is work. Dropping off your child is the work that you have to do.
Right, but I'm just saying I'm not putting in that much as far as on the
Yep.
business much anymore. I still put in a lot, but not as much as I used to.
TB Williams had a church want to do that with her lease option. Oh yeah, she wasn't sure about that. Bees are sure you're okay with lease options. Buyer subletting to someone else, Scott.
Well, I don't do lease options anymore, but with my contract for deed, absolutely. Absolutely.
So you're telling people, so you don't even want people doing lease options in your opinion.
I don't do lease options. So if that was a question for me, I don't
Yeah.
do lease options. I do land contracts or contracts for deed, and then I give their owner. So if they want to sublet it, if they want to rent it out by the room, if they want to move in dogs and raise, jaguars, they can do what they want. It's their home. So that's the way I treat them, as though it's their home.
Nice. Yeah, I do lease options still, but rewind the video and Scott will tell you his experience. Is it the basic? It's the same concept though, right? The concept of the repairs.
99% of it is identical.
Say that
Absolutely
again.
identical. It's just different paperwork.
Say that again, Scott. You got broke up.
I'm saying 99% of the differences between a lease option and a land contract is identical. But 99% of the whole thing's identical. The big difference is with a lease option, they have the option to purchase. They're just a tenant. With a land contract, they are purchasing.
Nice.
That's the big difference.
Brian Tennant, how do you sell a $30,000 house for $89,000, Scott?
So that is a fantastic question. So first of all, it's not a $30,000 house. It's just a house we got for $30,000. Secondly, and this is exactly how I've answered it, because I've had tenant buyers who would pull up the city records and they'd be like, "You only paid blah blah blah. How is it worth 89?" Right? And my answer, you might want to write this down because it's a good one. My answer, no, you don't really have to write it. I'm just messing with you. My answer is, I said, how is value determined? I said, value is whatever somebody is willing to pay for something is what it's worth. I don't care what Zillow says. I don't care what an appraiser says. An appraiser could say it's worth 100 grand, but nobody will pay more than 30. Guess what? It's worth 30. And vice versa. An appraiser can say it's worth 30, but people are willing to pay me 100. Guess what? It's worth 100. It's anything, not just houses, your TV, the headset you're wearing. Anything is worth what somebody's willing to pay for it.
Buyer and seller.
I'm looking at your headphones, and I'm thinking, you can go to Five Below and buy a headset for $5, or you can go to Apple Store and buy the Beats for $300. They're both headsets, but it's what somebody's willing to pay. If nobody would pay $300 for those, then they would go down to $250 and $200 until they found a dollar amount somebody would pay. It's the exact same thing with houses. When people say, "Well, there's no way I would pay $89 for that house," I said, "Well, then don't buy it. Somebody else will pay it next week," and they do. Somebody else will pay it next week.
That's
and
true.
So that's my answer. I don't have to justify anything. It's worth whatever someone's willing to pay, and I will find someone to pay the amount I want.
Nice.
Go
ahead.
I was saying, I know that's a long answer for that question, but that's the answer.
Nah, I loved it. Now tell me this, Scott, in my opinion, and I was talking to Joe Alt the other day. Do you know Joe?
Years and years ago, he was doing this a long, long time ago. I'm talking early 90s. I remember him driving me around looking at properties. This was a long time ago. He was with Remax over right by Town Center. Well, Town Center wasn't even there then, but yes, I remember him.
I met him in 2003. He had 600 houses when I was first starting, and I couldn't even speak the same language as that he was talking. But he was saying that his business kind of goes down regarding down payments in January and February. Is that your experience too, regarding people having access to down payment money?
No, it goes up in January and February. We call it, this is our money season, tax season. Tax season is when we go up, but we make all of our down payments more money. January, February.
They don't get the tax return. I mean, it takes they don't get it until they got the
Jackson Hewitt will give you a check right there on the spot.
Okay, so yours goes up. Yours goes up.
We go up significantly. January, February, March. First quarter is our highest producing quarter because of tax refunds.
Well, yeah, I'm saying the first quarter, January, February, March. I'm agreeing with for me it is. So you're getting down payments in January too.
Yeah.
Wow. You're a beast, Scott. Go ahead. REI Necessities wants to know, would you buy a house over $30,000, Scott, and sell the note after a year of consistent cash flow?
So that's a fantastic question. So my answer is I don't personally do it, but I do have friends that's their whole model is they do almost exactly what I do, but they do actual closings, record them, and then sell the notes. I've never dabbled into that, but there's supposedly real good money in it. I haven't done it. I like to stay in my lane. I love what I'm doing. And so there's a million ways. This is an interesting thing. Even in this one niche of real estate, there's a million ways to make $1 million. The problem people get into is they try and do all of them. And if you chase too rapidly, it's done. And so my thing is always, I'm like, let me just pick what I want to do and then do that. Because there's always somebody else with another shiny object. And, you know, you talk to people that have been to these other seminars, they're like, oh, what about this? And what about this? And I'm like, yes, all that stuff is great. If you want to do it, go ahead. I'm not doing it. So anyway, about what you're saying, there is money in that. The note selling, I just have never done it. I have friends who do it. So the answer is yes. I can see that being a good idea. It's just not something I'm doing.
You know what, REI Necessities, I would like to just liken or the analogy of the NFL. I'm sure Scott can chime in. Every coach has a master plan for their team, and it's not a losing plan. It's what they think that works best for them. Scott?
Yeah, I realize now that what I'm doing now is crushing it. I mean, we started the slow flip model in 2011, and there's nothing else like it. I mean, there is nothing else like it that can set a person free the way that can, and to give you the kind of money. I mean, we'll be 5 years from today, because everything has a 5-year mortgage. We'll be at, I mean, a ridiculous amount of money, $60,000, $70,000 a month, and that's only 5 years. You know, it's just there's nothing else like it. So yes, there's plenty of other avenues you can do, but I'm like, I don't need more, and so I'm like, let me just stay on the course that I'm on.
It's never enough, is it, Scott?
No, I think it can be. Well, you know, it goes back to your life and air, the thing you were talking about. For those of you who haven't read it, I think it's a fantastic book, and you know, it goes back to that, is that you really don't need as much as you think you need. You can just you can
in our minds. Yeah, we want more in our minds, but we don't need it. Luxury Car Store has our first super chat here. What's the difference, Scott, between selling using a land contract and selling using seller financing?
Seller financing gets recorded. That's basically the big difference. So a land contract is a contract that we keep in our desk drawer. It stays in our file. If you do actual seller financing, you go to an attorney, you have a closing, and it gets recorded. So it's basically the difference. Same end result. So the way I explain that to people, and I always tell them, I say, we do exactly the same thing as a bank does. This is the big difference. I say, with a bank, the deed goes in your name, and then you pay for 30 years. With us, you pay for 30 years, and then the deed goes in your name. Exact same end result. That's exactly how I explain it to people. Same exact end result.
Nice. Sydney wants to know, did you say you shouldn't take more than 5 years? Hold on, did I miss one? Oh, REI Necessities wants to know, would you pay more than 30 for the house?
So I bought some for 35 and 40 because they were smoking deals, but I still only borrowed the 30. I paid the 5 or 10 grand out of pocket. And I do that to keep my payments. So I basically, we're not going to get into raising private money now, but when you get into raising money, it just made my life so much easier to say, this is my program, rather than to say, well, how much do you want to lend? Well, how long, you know? And so I say, this is what I borrow. I borrow $30,000 per house at 12% for 5 years. That's my program. It makes it so much easier. We have more money available to us than I can spend, as opposed to if I was just like, hey, how much do you have? How much do you want to loan? This one's 50, this one's 20. And it just makes it more confusing for the lender. So now the lenders know, if I say, you ready for another deal? They know it's 30 grand, 12%, 5 years.
Gotcha.
So I would, but I would pay out the difference and still borrow the same amount.
I love your line, Scott, if you care to share it. This is probably another $100 line. The line where you don't get rejected when you ask someone to borrow money, Scott. You want to give them that one?
We're getting a whole nother topic. We're getting into raising money, but so I don't know.
Just the line. Just give them the line, because I don't want to take you all night. Just, if you want to share that line, it's a one-liner you use.
Well, one of the big things, I can't just say a line. I got to tell them everything. So one of the big things with raising money, why people fail at raising money, is because they fear rejection. Same as most everything. Why do people fail at most things? Because they don't do anything because they fear rejection. So I want to ask Chris if he wants to invest in my deal, but I'm afraid he's going to say no. So what do I end up doing? Not asking him. So the way we get our private lenders, or the way I train my people to get private lenders, is to ask nobody. How can you get rejected if you never asked anybody to loan you money? And so the way we go about that is, instead of asking, we offer. So we never ask them, do they want to loan money? We offer an opportunity to make 12% return on their money. However, we don't offer it to you. And that's the thing. And I'm pointing at the computer as though Chris can see me, but
I can see you.
So instead, so even though I want to know if Chris wants to loan me money, I will never ask Chris. I will ask him, do you by any chance know anybody that might be interested in making 12% return on their money? I got this great deal. It's only $30,000. I know you're not interested in your own stuff going on right now, but you probably have friends that might want to make 12% return on their money. And basically, I'm waiting for him now to say, well, hey, why don't you tell me about it? I might be interested. And then will I tell him when he asks? No, not you. Not you. I use all kinds of stuff going on. But I know you until I'm almost making him beg me to loan me money.
Lord.
You want to keep that posturing where you're the one in charge. You don't want to be like, oh, please, mister, would you loan me some money? Who's going to want to do that? You want to keep that position where you're offering an opportunity. And you are. You're giving him 12%. He's making 1% in the bank. So you're offering an opportunity. You're not begging. You're not asking for him to loan you money. You're offering an opportunity.
This is slam packed, Scott. What if I were to what would you say about the philosophy of there's more money out there to be borrowed than there are savvy borrowers, Scott? What would you say about
there
that?
are trillions of dollars in people's IRAs and 401ks, and they're making nothing. And it's all gambling. And you're giving them a secure, safe 12% return on their money. There's way more. And most people think, well, I don't know anybody with money. Everybody says that. They're like, well, I don't know anybody that has any money. And I say, well, then what do you got to lose? By offering the opportunity, you're asking them legitimately then, but they know somebody else. Believe me, you'd be surprised how many people have money away that they may not be telling you because they know you're after it. But there's plenty of money out there. There's more money out there than you can imagine.
Yes, Scott. Sydney wants to know, did you say you shouldn't take more than 5 years to pay off that investment?
So that's my personal program, and that could be part of my old age kicking in, but I'm all about free and clear now, and so I've worked it out so I won't borrow anything more than 5 years. It has to be able to pay itself off in 5 years. I have friends that do longer terms. I used to be on the old program of doing 30 years, but in my program now since 2011, everything I've bought since then has been 5-year mortgages. So that's
Nice.
my personal philosophy, is pay them off just as quick as possible.
My brother said he loves your mentality of training now, mentoring now instead of when you retire, Scott. Giver's game.
It was a real shift for me because I was afraid, and I was afraid that you can't train people in your own market and that everybody's going to be competing with you. And the actual opposite's true. Now we all work together and we all do more deals.
Scott, I've been kind of leaning on my cash side, buying them cash. Do you advise that for somebody that's on a smaller scale, or no? Do you not?
So let me tell you why I don't buy them in cash, and that is a great question. And I get friends of mine sometimes are like, it doesn't make any sense. Why would you pay this? This is the short answer. I don't need any more houses ever, right? Because I have a mentor of my own, right? We all have a coach, we all have a mentor, and so I had a conversation with him when I got to about 80 houses, and I said I think I'm done. I don't need any more houses. At 80 houses, that'll put me at 40 grand a month. I said I don't need any more. Why am I still doing this, right? Why am I still buying houses? I don't need any more houses. And his answer, I remember, and I still tell people all the time, he says, keep buying. And I said, well, why? And he says, well, first off, years ago, and you remember because you're in my local market, we couldn't buy a house for these kind of prices. Before the bust, you couldn't buy a house for under 100 grand. Now we're buying houses for $20,000, $30,000. So that's one reason. And number two, he says, you don't cost you anything. He says, you don't come up with any money. You basically borrow the full amount. The tenant pays off the full amount. Why would you not buy it? And I'm like, well, when you put it that way, I guess it seems stupid of me. If I was paying my own cash, then I would be like, you know what? I don't need any more. Why am I going to put out any more of my own money, right? And I know it's the same thing. Everybody's like, oh, it's out of one pocket into another. I get that. But in my head, I'm like, well, if I found a deal, they're going to fund it. They're going to pay it off. And all I'm going to do is sit back, and then after 5 years, I'm going to get paid forever. I'm like, well, I'd be a fool not to keep doing it.
Wow.
That's my 2 cents. That's why I don't fund them. I don't borrow on all of them.
Al J wants to know, are we good, Scott? I don't want to hold you up, dog.
Yeah, we're good. My wife will be yelling at you if my dinner's cold, but that's all right. We're good.
Al J wants to know, do you pay the tax? Do you pay the taxes through the county when you did pay the insurance on behalf of the sellers? Was it the investor insurance policy when you had the property?
Yes, it was a regular landlord policy.
Gotcha.
When it was in my name, and they had a renter's policy.
Gotcha. We got another super chat. Let me go down and get that, and I'll come back up.
I don't even know what super chat is. I gotta learn this.
Somebody gives us a love offering to ask you a quick question, Scott. Somebody gives us a love offering. Who is this? Realist, what's up? He's right. You'll be shocked by what's possible. He's made a lot of money before, and I'm not even anyone, and I'm not even, I don't give up. I don't ever give up until you are starting, even if you're starting small. Oh, don't give up. Don't ever give up. What would you say to that, Scott?
Yeah, absolutely. I tell people there's really only one way to fail at this business, and that's what he just said. The only way to really fail is to quit. because you know we have a roller coaster. Our whole business is a roller coaster. We have great times and bad times, but the only way to actually fail is to quit, just to stop.
Nice. I gotta get the super chats first, and we'll come back up. This is so nice, Scott. Thank you, brother. You can go ahead, baby. You want to get started? Have you ever converted a lease to a lease option tenant? TB Williams wants to know, have you converted a regular rental to a rent lease option, Scott?
So yes. So I have converted not lease options, but I've converted regular rentals to land contracts. And I just recently did a whole bunch. So I think if you guys were listening the whole time, I told you I just recently in November, I purchased a package of 24 houses. Well, 14 of them were already occupied, and they were occupied with regular tenants. So regular rentals. And so what I did is I sent them all letters telling them that I'm the new buyer and that we do not do rentals. And at the end of your lease, we'll not be renewing. However, we sell properties with owner financing, and because you're already in the property, we will sell it to you with no money out of pocket, and your payment will stay relatively the same. And so just basically give us a call, and we'll change them over. So it's a great deal for them. They're already in the property anyway, and I'm telling them no down payment. You're already in it. I want you to not call me for repairs, basically. You're already in it. I just don't want you calling me telling me something broke. And so they've all converted, because otherwise their option was going to be once their lease was up, I was telling them, sorry, I'm not renewing. I don't want tenants.
Sean wants to know, Scott, you are the man. And the Haskins effect. I like that. I had to change the name of this broadcast. Millard Hodge Jr. What is the first step to pursuing a tax sale property after locating it on the list? Scott.
Has it already been auctioned off, or it's a pre? So
the
same thing as you would do with a pre-foreclosure. You door knock, send them a letter, and get in touch with them. We get a lot of before the tax sale. Yep. So you would do the same thing you would do with a pre-foreclosure. You get in touch with the owner, and the owner still has the right to sell all the way up to the day of the auction.
That's right. Sean Hoggart wants to say, I hope your competition isn't still cutting your signs anymore, Scott.
Ah, very funny. So you saw that video. Yeah, no, they've been pretty good for a while now, but that's an excellent video. That was interesting. Do you know what he's talking about, Chris?
I saw that video. Yeah, go ahead, Scott. You can tell our viewers that didn't see it.
No, we don't have to get all into it. But yeah, there was a competitor that was basically paying people $1 a sign to steal all of our signs, and not just mine, downtown. And then he cut them up and put them in a dumpster, and we found them there, and I did a video out there. That's all. But no, we haven't had that in a while.
Well, your point was, Scott, when you, just like Confucius says, when you throw rocks, you burn your hands, though. Wasn't that kind of what you were saying, though?
Yeah, it's a lot easier to make money worrying about yourself making money than trying to stop your competitors from making money.
Kathy has a pretty house in an area that only rents for $700 a month, but no one has the $2,000 to $3,000 put down. What would you suggest in Alabama, Scott?
So Alabama, what part of Alabama are you in? I just spoke in Alabama in November. So I hate when I have people that will fill properties for me, and I hate when they say no one has the money, because I'm like, well, somebody has the money. We just haven't come across that person yet. So I wouldn't get into the mindset of believing that, because I hate when guys are working for me and they're like, oh, nobody has any money. And I'm like, well, somebody has it. And then I'll do my own marketing, and next thing I know, somebody has the money, and we get it done. So don't convince yourself just because you spoke to some people that don't have the money that no one has the money, because there is money out there.
I'd like to know what type of advertising she's doing, Scott. What about you?
Yeah, so I primarily do three things. I do the white signs with magic marker. I do Craigslist, and I do Facebook Marketplace. Three things.
Robel wants to know, do you purchase or sell notes on the secondary market, Scott?
I do not. I think somebody asked that a little while ago. I know that's a good business, and I have friends that do that, but I don't do anything with notes.
Al J, do you evict or foreclose on a land contract when the buyer doesn't pay?
Excellent question. And as of right now, we've always done straight evictions and haven't had any issues with it whatsoever. Regular straight evictions, go to court just as if it was a regular rental.
Out of 10, Scott, how many people you're evicting that don't pay? Out of 10.
So, ironically, it's very few that actually get evicted. We file on a lot. So, and I'll give you a little tip here. That's a learning experience, and I would probably say worth its weight in gold. So we file on a lot, and the reason is I used to be very lenient. And what I mean by that is somebody would say, "Oh, I'll have it next week," and so okay, I won't file, I'll wait, and I would try and work with them, and what would happen, and this isn't just me saying it, I was screwing them. I was screwing them by being nice to them, and what I mean by that is next thing I know, they owe 2 months, they owe 3 months. They've never seen that much money in their life. They can't come up with it, and now it's cheaper for them to move. But when I'm strict, which is how we are now payments are due on the 1st. They go late after the 5th. We charge everybody a late fee after the 5th. On the 12th, we file paperwork. So no matter what the story is, we file. We'll cancel it. I'll cancel every eviction, all the way up to the sheriff coming. Even after the sheriff coming, I've had people get evicted and then they come up with the money, and I'll let them back in. I don't want the house back. I just want the monthly payment, but I have to schedule. And so we're very strict with late payments after the 5th. On the 6th, they get a late fee, and on the 12th, we file for everybody. However, with that said, back to the actual question, very rarely do we ever actually evict anybody.
Gotcha.
Because now it's only 1 month they have to come up with to stop the eviction, so they can come up with it. But when I was being lenient, now it's 2 and 3 and 4 months, and they can't come up with it.
Gotcha. Rashida wants to know, when she says paying off, when you say pay off in 5 years, are you paying down the principal extra, or is that completely amortized, Scott?
Amortized for 5 years. If you
Angela,
put in your amortization calculator, 30,000 at 12% for 60 months, 67.
Yeah.
So it's amortized. It pays itself off.
Angelo H, you mentioned earlier in the video that you sell your duplexes to investors. I'd like to know what type of contract you use for that, Scott.
Exact same.
Same thing.
Exact same. I do it through a land contract.
Healing through inspiration, peace. Ronnie, my brother, this system is cool. Just bring him to the deal. Yep. Danny, Truth Seeker from Houston, Texas. Scott wants to know, what's the best way to market when starting out part-time? I'm presuming he's talking about for buy. I don't know.
I'm assuming he means marketing to buy houses?
Yeah, me too. I presume that.
Yeah, so obviously the cheapest things to do is going to be bandit signs and door knocking. Go to pre-foreclosures, actually doing door knocking and driving for dollars. Those are always, when someone's looking for the lowest cost. The way all marketing works is the more expensive it is, the less time and energy it takes. And if you want something cheap or free, the more time and energy it takes. So when you're starting out and don't have money, put in the time and energy instead. After you start making money, now you start putting money into it, and you don't have to run around and do the work.
How are you okay, yes, that's the same thing Sky wanted to know. Sky wants to know, how are you marketing for your houses? I don't know. Did we cover that already?
Yeah, we did. I do the same things I teach everyone else. We do our own bandit signs, we do our own direct mail, and now we're doing that ringless voicemail, as well as all the guerrilla marketing that we do.
Yep. Nice. Realist. Wealth grabbing. Sky wants to tell you, thanks for teaching, Scott.
You are very welcome. I've enjoyed it.
Danny, great. Karina, I love how excited you guys get when you talk about what you do.
That's
Scott energy. You've been like this forever, Scott. Talking about real estate, it's like you just.
Yeah, that's the joy of the business. That's when we come alive.
I have We Buy Houses on my shirt. That's right. You got We Buy Houses on your car, didn't you, Scott? You had that before. I don't know.
So I don't anymore. I used to have it years ago. Now I used to be a big believer in wrapping cars and putting the lettering on it. Now I'm a believer in magnets, and the reason is because, again, something I learned the hard way is that you don't want to show up to an appointment with We Buy Houses on your car. And two reasons. One is they're a motivated seller. If they're distressed, they don't want the rest of the neighborhood to know they're distressed. And secondly, you don't want the neighbors to know that they're selling, because then oftentimes the neighbors are like, "Hey, I'd be interested. How much is he paying? I'll pay you $5 grand more than that." You did all the work, and now he ends up selling to his neighbor. So that's why we don't wrap the vehicles anymore.
When I had my car ride, Scott, I'd park around the corner, dog.
Yeah.
Brian wants to know, what if your tenant does something illegal by occupying the house? Possibly a code violation, perhaps electrical.
So if it's illegal, like he's selling drugs, he goes to jail. But if it's like a code violation, they would send us the information and we send it directly to him. And if it gets escalated to where they want us to go to court, which I've had happen, generally they'll start off in their office. We go to court, we show them the paperwork with it, and then they end up taking it up with them.
Nice.
Yeah, I have had code violations happen before.
Would that be an insurance thing? I was concerned about that too. If there's a problem with the house and something happened and they did something in the house that was unscrupulous with the repairs, is that an issue that you're concerned about?
So I'm not concerned with it, to be frankly honest with you. And this is something I'm actually educating myself on right now about becoming self-insured. I'm not a fan of insurance. So I have insurance, but I would just assume not, because I don't make claims. when something happens, I take care of it. And the only way I would make a claim like is if the entire house burned down, because insurance, and I don't want to get on a rant about insurance, but you know, you make a claim, they'll give you a check for 10 grand, and then they raise your rates, and you pay the 10 grand back. And now you keep paying it after you paid it back. I'm like, they didn't do us any favors. If the house burned down, maybe different story if it's real money. But I'm learning about captives, and I'm not going to talk about it now because I don't even know enough to talk about it. But where you can become your own insurance company, and that's what I'm working on learning, because I would much rather spend $60,000-$70,000 a year I spend on insurance to put into a company that I own, and then if I had an issue, pay it out of that own company. But that's for another day.
Yeah, another day. How about flood insurance, Scott? Are you not worried about that?
No. Again, you got to remember what we pay for these houses. So yeah, I was going to say what we pay for these houses is so minimal for the rate of return that we get that if I haven't had any issues whatsoever to date, and this is going on 25 years, but if something was to happen and there was a flood, we'd have to take care of it. Or if the person wanted to leave and they didn't have any insurance on it, I would sell it to somebody else now as contractor special, has flood damage, 2,000 down and X amount of dollars.
Wow.
And
wow.
I'm not going to be repairing it. So
Sydney wants to know, I love the 5-year method. I've been trying to figure out subject to deals, stay away from the loan-based business. Yeah. Angelo, she wants to know how old you are, Scott. Is that too much to go over the board?
45. I know I'm a little grayer than I used to be, but I got a 9-year-old boy.
Healing through inspiration. Oh, the 40 days. They're talking about a book they got. A few more and then we're gone. T.B. Williams, do you originally purchase these in your LLC or do you use a land trust, Scott? We talked about that briefly.
I purchased them in my LLC. I need to learn more about land trust. I actually don't know too much about them right now.
Healing. Iron sharpens iron. That's exactly where I talked to Scott.
Yep.
Never put your competition down. That's correct. Yes, he already won over land contracts versus lease options. Justin, you can rewind the tape for that one. Is Scott holding title in the land trust? No, he just said he's doing LLCs. Oh, Scott wants Al J wants to know, Scott, did you accidentally bring the option with the lease to court? You mentioned
No, she did.
The tenant.
I didn't do it. She did.
Okay, so she showed the judge the lease.
Yeah. No, I would never bring the option. It was always just the lease, but she brought it.
This has been the best 2 hours I spent on YouTube in years. Wow, Scott.
Wow.
Class, I love it. You know what's weird, class? I get to bring to you the people that have put into me over the last 10 years. That's why I love the internet, Scott. Scott, we're done.
Yes.
We got them. Scott, finally, are you doing Airbnb? Real quick, I wanted to know.
No, I'm not. Again, I have friends that are doing it, but to me, that's an entire different business. It's not just real estate. It's not just rentals. And it's a great business for the people that are into it, but I'm not doing it. Again, I'm sticking in my lane. I'm sticking with the slow flips.
All right. I want to say one name real quick, and then I want you to give us the final words. I want to just ask you, if I just mention the name Lonnie Scruggs to you, what's the first thing comes to mind for you?
Yeah, we met Lonnie. Lonnie was fantastic. So he basically did almost exactly what we're doing now, but he did it with mobile homes. I have his books still, and a lot of what he teaches is kind of exactly what we're doing now. And I used to do them with mobile homes when he taught us that. Same thing we're doing now, only back then I would buy a mobile home on a 2-year note and sell it on a 5-year note. Now we're buying on a 5-year and selling it on a 30, and it's a house rather than a mobile home. But yeah, we miss Lonnie. He was a great guy.
Oh, nice. Final words for people that want to get into the business, Scott, or just somebody new, just trying to get over that hump. It's a mental hump. I feel like it's kind of like a mountain when you're looking at the real estate business, Scott. What would you say to him?
Well, there's a couple different things. One, and I know we mentioned this already, there's a lot of shiny objects out there. There's a million ways to make $1 million. Just choose one and be good at it. You don't have to know everything. So many people, and I even people in my coaching program, they're like, yeah, but this guy says you can do this, and this guy says you can do that. And I'm like, yeah, you can. You can do all those things. Just like you guys asked me about notes. Notes are a good business. I just don't do it. There's nothing. Airbnb, great business. I just don't do it. There's plenty of things you can do. Life is a lot easier. Just pick the one you want to do and then become a master at that. Then if you want to turn on to something else, do a second thing. But don't try and learn everything. Just pick one thing that works for you and go out and do it.
and generally speaking, Scott, would you recommend people to master small before they try to get to the 80 houses? Master getting one house, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, people say, "Oh, how'd you get to that many houses?" I said, "Oh, I bought one, then I bought two, then I bought three, then I bought four." You know, and that's the only way you get there is a house at a time.
Class, thank you so much for allowing us to pour into your life to raise your financial literacy. Please take a second.
I got to get a subscribe button for my channel. That's awesome. I love it.
See, iron sharpens iron, brother.
Love it. I'm getting a cinder block tomorrow.
You know, we'll make you one. Subscribe to my channel, please, class. Smash the thumbs up button and comment on what other trainings you'd like for us to do for you, and share this content for anybody that's getting into the real estate business. You're only one lead away from your next house. Scott, God bless you. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time. I'll see you soon.
Yeah. Talk to you. Peace.